to do this with, and the logistics to turn single family homes into a new type of institutional asset. Before 2008, the single family rental home market was run by mom and pop landlords, people who might own one or two extra properties. After 2008, corporate landlords were born, and these firms swooped in, particularly in fast growing Sun Belt markets like Atlanta, Phoenix, and all across Florida and Texas, and began a historic buying spree. They weren't just buying houses, they were buying entire neighborhoods, right? Their advantage is going to be overwhelming. While a typical family comes to the table with a mortgage pre approval, which depends on financing and inspections and appraisals, these large firms come with something far more powerful: cash up front, on hand. All cash offers are clean, fast, and low risk for the seller. A seller looking at an offer from a family that might fall through versus a guaranteed cash deal from a corporation will almost always choose the cash over the hypothetical. It's nothing personal, it's just business. And the firepower of out muscle regular home buyers. Because, I mean, think about it. If you have a house that's on the market for a few $100,000, say $250,000, the house could be undervalued. It's been on the market for half a year, 3/4 of a year, and it's down 15, $20,000 from its original price. A Wall Street company can look at this house at a $30,000 worth of equity in the property over the asking price and decide to just take it as is, cash up front, with no negotiations. Whereas a single family bidding on a property might decide to come up and put down 15 or $20,000 less than the asking price. A lot of people understand what that means. So what that means is that if one person is trying to talk down the price and the other person is willing to take the price at sticker price, what happens is that the person that's trying to talk down the price gets outbidded by the person that's willing to not only take it at the asking price, but give you cash to close the deal. So you'd have the money as fast as it could take to wire the money. And that really puts out families that just barely covered the down payment. They just got enough money for closing costs, and they're in a position where, contingent to the mortgage company, they qualify for the house. The impact of this shift is reflected in some stark statistics. The historical average first time home buyers as of 2024 was less than 40%. So now, between 24 and 25 going into 2026, it's at 21%. It has plummeted to record lows. For younger Americans, the picture is just as bleak because in late 2024, the home ownership rate for houses under the age of 36 stood at just about 36.3%. It's a crisis of affordability. Almost nobody can afford a house. Now everybody's renting rooms out of apartments. And it's estimated that potential buyers now need to earn significant more than the worker to even afford a typical home, with some analysis putting the required income 40% or higher than the median. It's not surprising that 83% of Americans now say that buying a home is harder than it was for previous generations, because you making 40% of the median income, that's closer to 70, $80,000, right? Really close. This isn't just a financial issue. It is a societal one. So the executive order itself contains the lines: people live in homes, not corporations. When a neighborhood shifts from being mostly owner occupied to being managed by a distant corporate entity, the character of the property can change. The sense of community can fade. Renters who may be more transient often have less incentive to invest in the long term upkeep and social fabric of a neighborhood, which means that you're not getting used to your neighbors. Nobody knows who lives next door to them. If you go outside, you're going straight to your vehicle. There isn't closer together. Instead, you have a dynamic where nobody knows anybody. Nobody's bonding with you. It keeps everybody separate, right? And this is compared to an owner who is building equity and putting down roots. So if you're always on the go because you're not married to the business versus, I mean, you're not married to the property versus somebody who owns the house, building equity on the property, getting to know their neighbors, community watch situation, the community development projects where they're working on the community centers for the kids, they're the community parks, the community this, the community that, community gardens. All that stuff is gone. And this has led to the core complaint at the heart of the new policy that these investment firms aren't just buying the houses, they are hollowing out the communities and turning them into assets on a balance sheet. And for years, this has been the accepted behavior. It's frustrating for you, it pisses me off. But the reality of the housing market is just that. It's just a line item on a balance sheet now. But for the new executive order, it argues that it doesn't have to be this way. So, for over a decade, that has been the landscape, a housing market that feels increasingly out of reach, a system where families are in direct, unfair competition with some of the most powerful financial institutions in the world. But on January 20th, like I said before, 2026, the White House rolled out a policy designed to hit the brakes on Wall Street's shopping spree. The executive order stopping Wall Street from competing with Main Street home buyers is designed to fundamentally realign the government's roles in housing markets. Politically, this is a classic Trump positioning. It frames the issue as a clear cut battle. The hardworking American family on one side and the faceless Wall Street elite on the other. It's a narrative that casts the president as the defender of the common person, fulfilling a campaign promise to ban large institutional investors from buying more single family homes. The message is designed to resonate with the millions of Americans who feel locked out of the market. The White House fact sheet puts it plainly. The goal is to protect the American dream by making sure large institutional investors do not buy the homes that could otherwise be purchased by the families. But this is more than just a press release. It's an order that directs the entire federal government to change how it operates. It established as official US policy already that large institutional investors should not be acquiring the existing stock of single family homes suitable for American families. The order isn't a suggestion, it is a directive. It instructs federal agencies to reorient their programs away from helping corporate acquisition and towards supporting individual homeowners. It's important to understand that this is not an outright ban. It is an executive order that has its limits. The president can't handedly outlaw a specific type of private transaction. But as we know, Trump always finds a way. What the president can do is control the vast apparatus of the federal government. This order is built around a simple yet powerful lever: federal money and support. The core strategy is to cut off the flow of government backed benefits that makes it easy and profitable for large firms to buy up homes. It's a complex policy with many moving parts. So let's get into that real quick. We're going to discuss the nuts and bolts of how this is all supposed to work. So, how does the executive order actually plan to stop Wall Street? It's not one single action, but a multi pronged attack using financial leverage and regulatory oversight. So, let's break down the key mechanisms. First, the big question: who is a large institutional investor? This is a critical detail. The order doesn't give a specific definition. Instead, it delegates that job to the Secretary of Treasury, who is tasked with defining the term within the next 30 days or so. This allows for a little bit of flexibility, but also creates some uncertainty. The definition will likely be based on a combination of factors: a firm's total asset, the number of single family homes that it owns, or maybe the percentage of homes it owns in a specific local market. This definition will be crucial as it determines who gets hit by the new rules. The second and weapon is this order's arsenal. It's going to be cutting off the federal support. This is the heart of the policy. The order directs a whole host of federal agencies to stop helping large investors buy single family homes. This is going to include agencies like the Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, the Federal Housing Administration, or FHA, and the Department of Veteran Affairs, VA loans, and the Department of Agriculture, USDA loans. For example, the FHA loan, which insures mortgages to help people with lower down payments, will be prohibited from insuring a mortgage taken out by a company defined as a large institutional investor to buy an existing home. But the most significant part of this financial blockade involves two entities. You've heard of it, but might not follow or fully understand: Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, those two old school funders of student loans. These are government sponsored enterprises, or GSEs, and they are the titans of the American mortgage market. Think of them as giant loan factories. Your local bank makes a loan to you. Then, to free up cash to make more loans, it sells your mortgage to Fannie or Freddie. They then bundle those thousands of loans or mortgages together into a mortgage backed security and sell them to investors with a guarantee that the payments will be made. This constant flow of money is what keeps the US mortgage market liquid and affordable. This executive order tells Fannie and Freddie they are no longer allowed to buy, guarantee, securitize mortgages made to large institutional investors for the purchase of existing single family homes. Now, this is a massive blow. It effectively cuts these large firms off from the cheapest and most reliable sources of financing in the world. Third, the mechanism is the no bulk sales rule. For years, when government agencies ended up with a large portfolio of foreclosed homes, often called real estate owned or REO properties, the easiest way to get them off of their books was to bundle them up and sell them in one go to the highest bidder. And who was always the highest bidder? A large investment fund. This order puts a stop to that practice for federal assets. It explicitly states that federal agencies must avoid disposing of their properties in a way that simply transfers them to large investors. This leads directly to the fourth mechanism, creating a first look advantage for Main Street. If the government can't sell the foreclosed homes in bulk to Wall Street, who does it sell them to? This order says the priority must go to individual owner occupant buyers. It mandates the use of first look policies, which creates an exclusive window of time that says the first 30 days a property is on the market where only individuals, families, or nonprofit entities can place a bid. Now, I don't know if y'all remember, we was talking about how we could have a 42, I do believe $42 million a year budget that could put a stop to homelessness over the course of 5 or 10 years. Nonprofits can still place bids on these properties. Big business cannot. The giant corporations have to wait on the sidelines, at least for that first 30 days. Now, this is designed to level the playing field just a little bit more and give regular people a fighting chance at least the first 30 days the house is on the market. So if you got a house that you see on the market that been there for 177 days or 255 days, big businesses passed that house right on up. They could have swooped in and got that, right? So if you're not negotiating it inside of the first 25 days, you're looking at one that's like 6 months on the market kind of thing. Finally, the fifth mechanism is to bring the Department of Justice, or DOJ, and the Federal Trade Commission, FCs, into the mix. The order directs the nation's top antitrust enforcers to start scrutinizing acquisitions by large investors for anti competitive behavior. And I'm going to say that again in case we had a little bit of lag. The order is directing the nation's top antitrust enforcers to start scrutinizing acquisition by large investors for anti competitive behavior, especially in markets where they have a heavy presence, such as Atlanta, Jacksonville, Charlotte, and even Phoenix. They are instructed to prioritize enforcement against practices like coordinated rent hikes or deliberately keeping homes vacant to manipulate local prices. This adds a significant legal threat on top of the federal restrictions for financing, warning these firms that if they get too big or act like a cartel, that they could face serious legal challenges. So you get a bunch of properties, you fill them up. don't don't use them to devalue all the other properties in the neighborhood, then buy up all the properties for cheap. You fill them up. Now, you might think this sounds like a total shutdown of big money in the single family housing space, but there are a very important quantity and very specific exception written directly into the policy. The build to rent carve out. This may be one of the most significant parts of the entire order. The restrictions that we were just talking about apply to buying existing built single family homes that's been around for generations, 100 years, 200 years, 40 years, 20 years, last 10 to 15 years. It's already been there. Somebody built it, they put it up for sale. You can't come in here as a big business and buy it and then rent it out. However, the order makes it clear what is known to be a build to rent or BTR community. These aren't individually scattered houses all over the place that investors buy one by one. These are entire new housing developments planned and constructed by constructed from the ground up with the specific intention of being rental properties. Think of an apartment complex, but instead of stacking the units, it's a neighborhood of individual houses with yards, sometimes fences, infrastructure in the back, ponds and stuff, uh, neighborhood playground, all inside of sometimes a gated community. Welcome to whatever Oaks, whatever village, big behind sign, and everything behind that sign belongs to one person, one road in and one road out, right? All got garages, everything like that, all owned by a single company, not an HOA, owned by a single company, rental properties. So why make this exception? The thinking here is going to be key to understand the policy's goals. The main problem the order is trying to solve is the direct competition between individual families and single individuals and the corporation itself for the limited supply of already existing homes. There's special economic zones all over the world where the government is encouraging big business to build properties from the ground up. So you don't want to contradict yourself. And that's what the government is trying to do. It's not to contradict itself. It's designed to stop investors from crowding out everyday buyers from already existing properties that have already been, it was built years ago, sold by its first owner, potentially up for sale by its second owner, and big business come to swoop in. It's trying to stop that. However, the administration also recognizes a deeper issue, a severe and chronic lack of housing supply. Experts estimate that the United States is short several million homes needed to meet current demand. An outright ban on all institutional investments could accidentally choke off a major source of capital for new construction, making the supply shortage even worse. The BTR market has been booming with tens of thousands of new rental homes being built each year. The BTR carve out is a strategic move to sheer Wall Street capital redirected towards more productive goals. So instead of them buying 500 properties that have houses on them, they can buy 500 acres of land and put some neighborhoods down. Or even better, buy 500 acres of land and put some apartment complexes down. Put a neighborhood of apartment complexes down. Have us start building up or building down the way China is doing, right? Because how can they fit 4 times more people in less space? Now, the message is going to be clear here. Stop competing with families for homes that are already here. If you want to be in the single family home market, then build new homes and add to the overall supply. That's what they want from big business. It is an attempt to separate what the administration sees as a predatory investment, buying existing stock, from the productive investment, creating new stock. By providing this approved path for institutional money, the policy aims to increase the total number of housing units in the country, which in the long run is the only real solution to affordable crisis. It's a dedicated balancing act, trying to protect home buyers now without stifling the new construction needs for the long-term future. The entire there it is. I was waiting on it to catch up with us here because the internet is really bad tonight. It is supposed to be better than what it is. So like I was saying, it is a big shift from the real American dream. So this all sounds very complex, but the bottom line is going to be simple. Will this actually help us buy houses. Will it make houses more affordable? The answer is complicated. Very, very complicated. Let's break this down. Potential good news and the reality check. From the potential good news, the most in you're a family looking to buy a starter home, you'll be bidding against fewer all cash in offers from massive corporations. Removing even a fraction of these hyper competitive buyers from the market could give your offer a much better chance at getting selected. That's what we're hoping. Second, you might get a shot at a foreclosed home instead of having to buy a rehabbed house that's being sold for top dollar. Thanks to the new first look policies, a pool of homes that was previously gobbled up by investors will now be available exclusively to owner occupants for an additional period of time before big business comes and swoops them up. This could open up a new inventory of potentially more affordable homes. Finally, there's a psychological shift. This executive order sends a powerful signal that the market should prioritize families over financial firms. This could subtly influence the behavior of sellers and real estate agents, creating a more favorable environment for individual home buyers. Now, the reality check why this isn't a silver bullet. Let's cover the hard truths. This order has big limitations. The biggest one is that private money still talks a whole lot louder than government money. The executive order only blocks access to federally backed finance. Giant investment funds have deep connections to private capital, pension funds, foreign wealth funds, and wealthy individuals. They can and likely will continue buying homes using cash that has no connection to the federal government. This order makes it more expensive for them because when you go to hard money lenders, those private sellers, they're sometimes charging you like 14 to 20%, 18% on your supposed to be short 6 to 18 month loan to pick up the property versus the 5 to 7% that you would get from the bank or 3 to 5% that you might get from a VA loan. So bigger money coming from private places might get you the property at a higher price, right? But it doesn't stop them or makes it impossible. It's just the cost of doing business. Now, however, though, the cost of doing business, if you're mandatorily required to pay more money to get money, you're not going to buy properties that have a lower profit margin, which also is going to leave more of the cheaper houses available for the individuals that can afford them. Another critical point is the scale of the problem. While institutional investors are a major force in certain zip codes, their national footprint is smaller than you might think. Depending on the definition, a large institutional investor owns somewhere between 1 and 4% of all single family homes in the United States, while their ownership is highly concentrated in cities like Atlanta, where it can be much higher. This policy may only have a small effect on national homes prices across the country. And this brings us to the real villain of the housing crisis, a catastrophic lack of supply. As many experts are pointing out, the fundamental reasons homes are so expensive is that we as a country haven't built enough of them for decades. The United States is facing a deficit of roughly 4 million homes. This executive order does nothing to change restrictive local zoning laws, the shortage of skilled construction labor, or even the high cost of building materials. Matter of fact, the tariffs that he's been throwing around actually is increasing the cost of those building materials. So until we build more homes, the market will remain intensively competitive. What it means for renters and investors. If you're a renter, the implications are murky. On the one hand, if institutional landlords slow their buying for existing homes, it could slow rent increases in some areas. On the other hand, as these firms pivot to build to rent spaces, you may see more new high end rental communities, but fewer individual houses for rent in established neighborhoods. For the large landlords and investment funds, this is a clear signal that the game has changed. In what way? We're still trying to figure that out. They are losing access to the very cheap government backed capital. Their compliance costs will further up, and they now face the threat of antitrust lawsuits. We know that they're going to offload those expenses onto their renters. We can expect to see major shifts in institutional capital away from buying existing homes and pouring even more aggressively into build to rent sectors and multifamily apartments, which are largely unaffected by this order, which also means that the developments that are changing are not necessarily going to shake the ground of real estate investment trust. It will, I guess, devastate or disassociate, disproportionalize expansion. That's what it's going to do. It's going to impact expansion. Um, and then while it's going to stop them from pouring into those single family homes and start flooding the aggressive efforts into build to rent sectors and multifamily apartments, we realize that these are going to be completely unaffected in a way where you're still going to see places, but they're going to cost way more than they used to because everything is being built from the ground up. One of the most important things to remember about an executive order is that it is not permanent. It stands while the president is still here. But what one president does with a pen, the next president can undo just as easily with a different pen. For the policy to have a lasting impact, it needs to be passed into law by Congress, which hasn't happened yet. Recognizing this, the executive order directs the White House to prepare legislative recommendations to make this policy permanent, which he's got 2 years left to push through. This is tapping into a powerful and growing bipartisan feeling in Washington that something needs to be done about Wall Street's role in the housing market. In fact, there was already momentum on Capitol Hill even before this order came out, because in 2026, Republican Senator Josh Hawley and Democratic Senator Jeff Merkley, the guy responsible for DHS not getting their funding, introduced a bill called the Homes for American Families Act. So they were already working together on this, right? Democrats and Republicans were working together on this. Their proposal is even more aggressive than the executive order from the president. It would use the Sherman Antitrust Act to make it illegal for investment funds with over $150 million in assets to purchase a single family home. An updated version of another bill, that Hope for Homeowners Act, would use tax changes to pressure large investors to sell off the homes they already own over several years. Now, if you're one of those big businesses that are buying up all of the single family homes, like what's that company called? Dixie, Doxy, something like that, where they help you buy the home, or at least they're supposed to. A lot of the times they cheat you out of the house and keep all your money. But if there was a legitimate company that was designed to sell these homes off to investors and they sell them off to buy that home from the bank, such as a in-house financing situation. So the big business buys the property from the seller, holds the property, does something like a lease to buy while they help that person get their credit together, and then after their credit is worthy of, they do an in-house finance contract and then sell the property off to the tenant, where they're not keeping a large inventory of property, and the people that are moving into their rental properties are actually owning those properties over time. There are situations where that can happen, and these bipartisans are pushing to show that the executive order from the president is part of a much larger national conversation, working people into owning their own stuff. I would love to rent an apartment or a house from a landlord that would then finance my ability to buy the house or the condo. It goes from me just being a tenant with no equity in the asset, which is the property that we live in, to me being the owner of the equity of the asset of the apartment that we live in. The president has urged Congress to act, and other legislative proposals are also in the works at the same time. So this sets the stage for a major battle over the future of American housing. The debate will be fierce. Proponents will argue these measures are essential to restore fairness to the market, and opponents will argue that it won't solve the root problem of supply and could have unintended consequences. And in my observation, the unintended consequences will be that the big business will make less money off of buying the properties that they can no longer rent out to other people, and they will have a delay in mass production of building new properties due to the updated building code law, and it's just going to slow down the creation of accessible properties to rent, but it will increase the quantity of available homes to buy. Americans not changing their spending habits. That's going to be the issue that we're going to have here. Because even if big business doesn't buy up all the single family homes, if your credit is shit and your payment history is shit and you live from paycheck to paycheck, you are not going to qualify, because most loans require you to have less than 50% debt to income. Most loans require you to have, sometimes in situations, less than 40% debt to income. And if you're supposed to have less than 40% debt to income to qualify for the house, that means your whole spending limit is 40% of your income. So if you're making $4,000 a month, and most people aren't, if you're making $4,000 a month, your standard of living is less than 1,800. That's 40%. Most people aren't living on 1,800 a month with a $4,000 a month income. Most people are living at 3,800 a month with a $4,000 a month income. These are going to be the things that need to change. You have to change your spending habits, turn some shit off, stop subscribing to a lot of shit, and start putting your money towards other places that will help you make, save, and invest money. But what is going to be clear about this is that the idea of limiting corporate ownership of single family homes has moved from the fragile areas of ideas to the center of the American politics. The executive order is the first big step, but the fight to turn this into permanent laws will likely define House policies for years to come, 25 years or more. Trying to reinforce the Trump account because, as I told you before, Donald Trump's Trump account will allow for tax deferment and special taxation on the stock options for the kids that are born after 2025, between 25 and 28. Um, where their 18th birthday, they can utilize that capital to do things like either start up a business, put money towards their college, or buy their first home. Specifically for the sake of buying your first home, if you've got tax deferment on a brokerage account that'll help you buy your first home, you have the capabilities to, with this new policy turning into law in 20 years, be able to go and get another house. The foreshadowed thought process of the executive orders from the current president that is really 20 to 25-year plan that's starting this year. It follows everything we talk about on this podcast. It's building your brand, finding your 20-year mark, and figuring out what changes you need to make to get there. This is going to push to create single national rules for housing. That is not happening in some kind of vacuum. It is going to be part of a much broader pattern for the Trump administration, using federal power to create uniform standards across the country, overriding state level rules in the process, right? So we've seen the exact same philosophy at play in two other major and seemingly unrelated debates: voting laws and the artificial intelligence that just went up in smoke just recently. First, let's look at these voting laws. The administration is championing the Save American Act. This bill, already passed by the House, would require every single person registering to vote in a federal election to provide documentary proof of U.S. citizenship, like either a birth certificate, passport, maybe a passport card, driver's license with the real ID star on it, or state ID with the real ID star on it. States would be forced to purge anyone from the voter rolls who cannot provide these documents, and election officials could even be sued personally for registering someone without these documents. So if you did not update your real ID in March of last year, you are not going to get to vote this year. Supporters say that this is about nationalizing election security and preventing non citizen voting. But opponents are arguing that it would create massive barriers for millions of eligible citizens, especially the elderly, low income voters, and naturalized citizens who may not have easy access to these specific papers. Before I go any further, you've got your social security card. You can order your birth certificate. You should have, unless you're homeless, access to your driver's license or state ID. You might not have the money for your passport card or your passport book, but you should have something to show that you are an American citizen to prevent from being deported. And whatever proof that is will allow you to vote. So even if you're 80 years old in November 23rd, 2026, your great grandbaby should be able to help you order your original birth certificate from whatever state you came from now, so that you can have it by November, so that when you vote, you ain't got no problems. This is called preventative maintenance, because you can't tell me that 60 years ago they did not record or document your citizenship status. Okay, it might have not have changed in a while. You might not have it in a filing cabinet in your bedroom or nothing like that. But for 400 bucks, you can buy it. But they say, well, if he's poor or she's poor and they can't afford to pay for it, your real ID is less than 50 bucks. There is no reason why you cannot get a copy of your real birth certificate and your real social security card over the course of the last 2 years. If you saved $10 a month, which is a pack of cigarettes in New York, that is $120 a year that you could put aside to build up the quantity of money that it would take to buy a copy of your birth certificate. It's like 250 to $300 to get your passport card. You could save your money for 2 years from the time Trump got into office until the time middle election comes. In 2 years, you'd have 240 bucks. You can buy your passport. There's no reason why it can't be done. If you can go to bingo every week and you can go to the casino twice a month, then you can buy your damn birth certificate. You just got to be responsible about your shit. Okay. Now, let's go into this artificial intelligence thing because December of 2025. Oh, yeah, we're talking about how stocks impact you right now. We got some stocks going across the bottom of the screen for 9 by 16, for 16 by 9, and then 9 by 16 is going across the top. December of 2025, Trump issued an executive order aimed at creating a single national AI policy framework. It specifically targeted state laws that, in the White House's view, are too restrictive. The administration argued that a patchwork of state rules on things like AI bias or deep fakes creates regulatory chaos, and it hurts Americans' ability to complete globally to compete against the global market. Now, Congress is considering the Trump American AI Act, which would write the federal preemption into law, creating one set of rules for the entire country and override many of the laws already passed on state level in places like California and Florida. He said, special shout out to Michael. He said that AI will destroy the industries. I was getting to that. I was going to get to that because AI was the Anthropic that I was just talking about last week, Monday and Tuesday. Anthropic that created that software that can mainstream artificial intelligence to function the standard equipment. Um, Donald Trump was like, hell nah, because that would take any military equipment, weapons, whatever, and have it automatically controlled by an algorithm that would not be controlled by hands-on human effort. And he put a stop to that. We're going to be talking about that over the next 20 minutes. His order made some changes. We're going to talk about how it impacts the stock market, but his order effectively put a stop to, at least for right now, delayed it at the very least, our observation of that Terminator 2 series that I told you guys we were headed in the direction of. Because taking a AI system that is 100% autonomous and putting it into the location where it has full control over government computers and government operated military structures, that algorithm would make its own decisions on whether or not it would launch nukes, whether or not it would launch drones, whether or not it would attack or defend. And Donald Trump was like, nope, take that out of here. So we're going to be covering that in just a second. It's going to be worse than iRobot. iRobot is a good analogy, though. I like iRobot. Well, iRobot was a bunch of robots that were designed not to kill humans, and one robot killed a human, and that let them know that the robots had a defect in them, right? And they found the defect and was able to shut down all the robots. What Donald Trump just did was let them know that you can't have this system run its own self. So he effectively put a stop to the Sarah Jane Chronicles. He put a stop to the nature officially run, took over human race, and then used human races as a source of battery power. That's where the Matrix came from. Keep everybody in a massively induced sleep, and then use the electrons from their brainwaves to power machinery. It's all boiling down to the same thing. We made the first mistake of putting machines in authority of law and then having the machines enforce that law on humanity. It never works. It never works. It's like an apocalypse now scenario. The very beginning of the Matrix. That's exactly the and as a movie buff, I would say that Sarah Jane Chronicles foreshadowed the Terminator, Terminator 2, Terminator 3, and Terminator 3 foreshadowed the Matrix. And what is that series from? I think 2019. Continuum with the time travel scenario where they have the human cyborgs that travel back in time to create a government that was operated by big business. That's where we are right now. That's where we are right now. So in both voting and AI, just like in housing, the administration is pushing for centralized national rules. Critics in all three cases argue that this one size fits all approach comes at the cost of individual rights and local control. You're just going to have to recognize that in order for you to be protected, you have to give up some freedom. It is what it is because the wild, wild west, where there's no laws, there's no protection. You protect yourself to the best of your ability. The more laws they put up, the more protection you have. But the more laws you put up, the less freedom you have. Michael says, "Say green, humans become a food source." Actually humans becoming a food source. The neurological food source actually is an unlimited resource. From the time the person is born until the time the person passes away, that could be like an 80 or 90-year long battery power. That is a very, very long power source. We can't think of anything right now that without being refilled can run for 90 years without having to be replaced. And when you put them in those matrix style hyperbolic chambers where there's no injuries or murders of any kind that's going on, you don't even have the unexpected breakdown of the human body. The person is born, put into a container, and then drained of his neurons for the rest of his life in a state of dream forever. Now, supporters argue it's necessary for national security to stop this stuff from happening. Economic powers from having control over everything, and then it starts bringing back balance and fairness. You said freeze dry. Well, not so much freeze dry, but more to the magnitude of liquid human energy sources. Because if you freeze dry a person, they'll freeze to death and they'll dehydrate. But I do get the premise. Now, this is a fundamental debate about who controls the rules, and it connects these very different policies into one big fight. This assertion of federal powers over AI became dramatically clear on February 27th of 2026. He said just that water. Well, I mean, Diddy's locked up, bro, so nobody's peeing on nobody to throw him out. So as it stands, it's like you keep him in a liquid cryo chamber, and you just milk them like that. Now, on February 27th, 2026, which was last week Friday, Donald Trump ordered all federal agencies to immediately cease and desist using AI tools from the company Anthropic. That's what I was talking about just a moment ago. The creator of the AI model Claude, Clude, Claude, not Cloud. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth went a step further, labeling Anthropic a supply chain risk for national security, effectively blacklisting it from defense projects. So they can't even get back in the door. So, why was a leading AI company suddenly banned? Well, it came down to a clash with the Pentagon over a major AI contract. Anthropic core safety policies, known as its constitution, explicitly refuses to allow its AI to be used for two specific purposes: mass domestic surveillance and fully autonomous weapon systems that can select and engage targets without a human in the loop. This is the safety policies of Anthropic. The Pentagon's officials, however, insisted, they insisted that any AI tool it uses must be available for all lawful purposes, even if they don't currently intend to use them for those functions. So even though Trump was like, nah, hell nah, the Pentagon was like, yeah, but let's have some systems that can automatically nuke a guy at a traffic light just in case. Michael said, question: when you start writing bills for AI, does it mean AI is becoming human? Well, when we start writing bills for AI rights, then yes. When we're just writing bills to prohibit the creation or usage of AI, then no, because that's equivalent to creating bills for service animals or dogs or stuff to that effect. And those bills are not designed to give the animal rights to control humans. It just, gives legal authority for certain things to happen under certain conditions. So it would be, I mean, it's a good segue into a nice joke, but it's more to the magnitude of, like, for example, those companion bots that are like $150,000 a pop right now. When those companion bots become mainstream and like 40 or 50% of Americans have one, then when bills start being passed for those companion bots to be utilized on a limited capacity for their right to recharge or whatever the fuck, that's when they start becoming more human. Bills are made to limit over usage. Every law in the country is typically made to offset overusage or disparagement. So the monopoly laws prevent one person from being the only person to make bank on everything. And then other laws that prohibit the little guy, the broke guy, the less backed guy from being screwed over by everybody else. It essentially doesn't provide equality per se, it provides equal equity. Equality is a short person and a tall person both looking over the same fence, even though the fence is taller than the short person and shorter than a tall person. Equal equity allows for both the tall person and the short person to have the equal ability to see over the fence, even though the shorter person needs a booster. Bills and laws more enforce equal equity, not equality, which is one of the reasons why our gender arguments never make sense because women claim equality, but it is not equality, it is equal equity. Equality is that if I get treated like shit in this scenario, you get treated like shit in this scenario. Equal equity is when you don't have enough, then you get enough to subsidize what you don't have so that we both have enough. That's equal equity, right? You said guns for everyone. Well, I mean, everyone's supposed to have a gun. And I don't. Everybody over the age of 18 is supposed to have at least one. They don't, but they should, because the Second Amendment gives everybody the right to protect the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness from foreign and domestic attacks. If everybody had one, if everybody in Home Depot was at least packing a pistol, if nothing else, you would have less robberies. If everybody in the bank was carrying something, you wouldn't have a robbery. Because who's going to run into a bank with a sawed-off shotgun and everybody's got an AR-15. They're walking back out of that bank and like, fuck that, I'm not doing it. But if you're the only person in there with a firearm, you control the whole room because what are they going to do? Mace you? I mean, for real. You say, well, look through the fence. That's only realistically speaking if you assume that there's a gap through the fence. Because if you look like a concrete wall, it can be identified as a fence. And if it's a 10-foot concrete wall, or let's say that it's a 5.5 foot, 6 foot concrete wall, there is no looking through the fence. You either are looking over it or looking at it. You don't get to see. Metaphorically speaking, it's identifying the observation that if you don't have the ability to receive the benefit, that enough equity is provided to you where you have equal ability to receive the benefit. The equality is that you have equal access to the ability to try, and equal equity is that you both benefit reasonably the same, even if you who has less is given more. For the person who doesn't have, they get less, but you both get the same experience, right? The difference between being able to pay for an annual pass versus you getting a free pass because you can't afford to pass, both parties get to experience the benefit of the pass. That's equal equity. Equality isn't that you both have a fair chance to buy the pass, but if you can't afford to pass, you can't get the pass. That's equality, right? The pursuit of happiness. But it's not just a pursuit of happiness, it's a pursuit to protect your happiness. Do you think that Elon Musk is correct about the idea of a future universal income for all Americans? Well, we've already covered that. The Rainbow Fund, which is a cryptocurrency that is going to be standardized and replace the United States dollar eventually. Not right now under Trump's administration, but all of the companies, all of the countries around the world that are transitioning into cryptocurrencies, there will be eventually a unified currency. And I was talking about it on his podcast a couple years ago. But it was back then identified as a rainbow currency, not like the LGBTQ currency, but like a legitimate, like all purpose currency where the cryptocurrency would be uh, valued for whatever it is when you buy it in your country. And then when you go to somebody else's country, whatever the price is, that's the price. There isn't a currency exchange. You don't have the currency exchange fees. So if it's like 67 Bitcoins to buy something in America and it's like 2 Bitcoins to buy it in a different country, if you have 67 Bitcoins, then it's you could just spend two on the other thing, hypothetically speaking. Now we understand that Bitcoins are thousands of dollars, so it wouldn't be like that much of a Bitcoin. It'd probably be like two points of a Bitcoin, but the idea is the same. And it will lead us all the way to please remember to like and subscribe. It'll lead us all the way to that era that we've seen on Star Trek where nobody has a paycheck, nobody has a financial need. Everything that they want is given to them, and they just show up and put in effort, which is communism. Stephen says, my professor in criminal justice drew a fence like you are describing to teach equity versus equality. So, welcome to college level financial discussions. Criminal justice, and I'm sitting over here talking about how things are breaking the bank. But that's exactly what it is. It shows equal equity because a lot of the times, and we don't do this in the relationship debates, um, explaining the difference between equality and equal equity because the person who doesn't put in as much in a relationship is not entitled to as much out of the relationship. And when they are in the position of the dependent, even if it's like a 30% dependent, they're still a dependent and they do not have equal equity in the relationship. They want equality where you have the equal ability to put up your opinion, but your opinion isn't followed because you don't have equal equity in the relationship. So what women want to do is put up equal equity in a relationship and go 50-50 on the bill so that they have an equal decision making authority, but it is not going to be equal. It is going to be 51-49 at best because if everybody disagrees, it's either not going to happen or it is going to happen. If it's not going to happen, the no has a majority vote. And if it is going to happen, the yes has a majority vote. So if you don't have the capabilities to have a deal breaker, third party decision maker, it is not 50-50. The majority vote, if I say no, no is no. Or if I say yes, yes is yes. Doesn't matter what your opinion is in that situation. If we don't agree, one person has the authority. That's just um the way things work. So if we're not going to do it because we agree, the naysayer wins by default. And if we can't agree if we're going to do it regardless, then the naysayer can remove themselves from the activity or remove their investment from the activity, but the activity is still going to get done. They don't have a say in a yes. So it's never going to be 50-50. But equal equity requires us to both have the same quantity of skin in the game, which means we both have to have the same quantity of capital involved in the game in order for us to have equal investment opportunity. And that just never happens. It never happens because as much money as she puts into the house, he puts that money on her. And it throws off the dynamic. So out of all of the stuff that she's getting out of the situation, he's putting up 75 to 100% of his income, and she's only putting up 30 to 50% of hers. She's putting up half. It's not the same. He said, what did the professor teach? He said the professor was in criminal justice, talking about the equal equity versus equal equality. Sounds like a headache. It's not a headache. It's just the logic, the difference between what's fair and what's not fair. Because what's fair is based off of your equal ability to receive, and the difference between your equal ability to receive versus your equal ability to try. Equal equity is your equal ability to receive. Equality is your equal ability to try. So we can all go into the casino and try, and that's equality, but that doesn't mean that we're all going to win. If it's set where we're guaranteed to win, if they give us a little bit of extra money for those of us who can't afford to reach the win, that's equality. For example, um, equality. Everybody can buy a house regardless of their race. Equal equity. First time home buyer credits, down payment assistance programs. Wealthier people can buy a house with no problem. Poor people can buy a house if they can afford it. That's equality. But equal equity is the down payment assistance program that helps you pay for the house because you otherwise would not be able to get it. It's not a lack of equality just because you're poor. It's a lack of equal equity. So it's not a headache if you understand it. It's just a difference in understanding. Michael says, life is 20% work and the other is 80% is who you know. Yeah, more than more more than 80% of all of your success is going to be based off of who you know, because your money is only going to get you so far, your knowledge is only going to get you so far, and your connections will get you the rest of the way. He says everyone should have a home. Everyone is supposed to own their own home. We don't, though. Most of us rent our own home, and most of us collaborate with a lot of other people to rent our own home. That's why you have multi income households, 2 to 5 people staying in a 3 to 4 bedroom apartment, and everybody sharing their expenses so that they can have more money to spend on not being financially responsible. Take college kids on college dorms, like $5,000 a semester for their housing, right? Which is upward of $15,000 a year just for room and board. That's a little over $1,000 to $1,200 a month for rent for a bed in a room, not the whole place, for a bed in a room. And it might be you have your own room, but you might be in a bunk bed situation where you and 3 other people are sharing the same room, and each one of y'all are paying $5,000 for the same space for the semester. So the property owner would be getting $20,000 a semester from that unit of 4 people paying $5,000 a person for that unit, all expenses included, where that property owner would be making upward of $60,000 a year off of that one unit. And if that's one unit out of 100 units, now they're making $600,000 a unit. And that is why they're saying, hey, we need to put a stop to this. We need to put a stop to this rent factor. Now, when we go back to the entropic topic, Anthropic refused to change the policies, and it is hard coded safety rules that they're just not flexing on, like iRobot. They're not flexing on these rules. We're not going to allow our equipment to handle stuff that is potentially capable of blowing things up. Now, the White House brought down the hammer, ordering the entire government to cut ties with Anthropic. Trump was like, "No, I don't want this company to do business with us anymore." And I was under the impression that Donald Trump was like, "No, we're going to not allow." But the Pentagon was being assholes in this particular situation. So, correcting myself, Trump said no for different reasons, but the Pentagon caused Anthropic to run for other reasons. Now, within hours of that ban, a rival company stepped up, and this is where Donald Trump came in. OpenAI. They had announced that they had reached a new agreement to provide its model to the Pentagon. In a carefully worded statement, OpenAI said that it would work with the military while still seeking to bar mass surveillance and keep a human in the loop for weapons use. Special shout out to Nicole. Detroit, Michigan is in the house. However, as it relates to OpenAI stepping up, the key difference appears to be contractual. While Anthropic had a hard red line built into its tech, OpenAI's agreement seems to rely more on policy alignment and contractual language, positioning it as a new preferred AI supplier for the United States government. The message to the entire tech industry was unmistakable. If you draw hard ethical lines on how your technology can be used by the military, you risk being completely cut off from the federal business. The shock waves from the Anthropic ban immediately hit the stock market, but it didn't last very long, raising a huge question. What does this mean for Nvidia? Right after Nvidia's announcement, this went down because Nvidia's announcement was on Wednesday, Trump's announcements was on Thursday and Friday. The chip company whose chips power virtually the entire AI industry. Nvidia makes the picks and shovels for everybody else's mining. So it doesn't matter which miner is mining on the mine, Nvidia's going to be there selling picks and axes. So Nvidia's exposure to Anthropic is real, but it's indirect. The company has invested in Anthropic and has a major partnership for it to buy Nvidia's latest chips through cloud providers. When the news broke, tech stocks, including Nvidia's, did dip, but not for long because Nvidia's stocks didn't collapse because the market understands a crucial fact. Nvidia sells the picks and shovels in every AI gold rush that we have ever seen over the past several decades. So the damage is far worse for Anthropic than it is for Nvidia. Anthropic's losses is a massive government consumer and now faces a political cloud that could make other large companies worry about their stability. But for Nvidia, the solution is different. If OpenAI now has the government contracts that Anthropic lost, Nvidia's chips will almost certainly be used to power that work, offsetting the risk. So whatever its Anthropic usage or OpenAI usage or even another competitor, they all need NVIDIA's hardware to build and run whatever model they're trying to run. So all they have to do is just shift their inventory somewhere else. Michael says, I enjoy using the AI on my phone, but it is text based only. So it will stay or it will say seek a professional advisor. Well, it depends on what you're talking about when we start talking about using AI, because we have AI technology that can curate responses when we do Google searches. We have AI technology that can enhance browser installations and updates and other such things. We also have AI technology that can pay attention to what we're talking about before we pick up our phone that aids us in filling in the blanks when we're trying to ask a question and we don't know how to spell a word, but it has the whole question after we type in two words because it was paying attention to what we were talking about next to our electronic device. It also has AI abilities to find certain items that are near your area with Google search, with Google Maps search, where you're trying to find a place to eat because you were talking about being hungry before you picked up your phone, or places to fix your car because your car broke down, and it can pick up it detects the fact that your car isn't moving anymore and recommend different mechanic shops in the area. AI systems on your cell phone can be a whole lot more than just texting. And then AI platforms helping your computer with massive word searches and drafting documents and curating information. All of that stuff comes from AI information, AI technology. Your vacuum cleaner, your dishwasher, your washer, your dryer, the computer coding on your car for fuel efficiency. All of that stuff comes from AI technology. Your security system on your house, your ability to sync your phone to the locks on your house, all of that stuff comes from AI technology. Some of it is hand to technology controlled, where you use a bioprint, it scans your bioprint and then automatically unlocks the door. And some things are completely autonomous, like your robo vacuum cleaner or your autopilot Tesla. It depends on where the AI stops being man-made, or not man-made, stops being man-powered and starts being fully autonomous. And the more we get closer to fully autonomous, because we're lazy, Americans are lazy. Most human beings are lazy to some degree. No matter how hard of a worker you are, you have a lazy streak in you, and you would prefer someone or something else to do what you don't feel like doing. And those painstaking tasks are done by automated systems because we don't want to have to do that, right? And that's why we start seeking towards those things. He said, like Steve Jobs would say, you don't know what you want until I create it. Well, it's more to the magnitude of you don't want to do it until some man makes it. We don't have cooks at the house anymore. We've got TV dinners. We've got microwaves. We've got instant meals. We don't have somebody cleaning the clothes at the house anymore. We have washers and dryers. We don't have anybody washing dishes at the house anymore. We have dishwashers. We don't have people vacuuming the floors anymore. We have electronic vacuum cleaners. We don't have anybody controlling the temperatures at the house anymore. We now have automatic central air and heat units, tenant windows. We have solar panels to offset electricity. Anything that is no longer feasible is now being replaced by automation. We don't have a reliable partner that can balance the budget while we're at work. We have fintech that helps us manage it on our own. We don't have the ability to afford accountants. We have fintech that is helping us calculate this stuff for us so that we don't have to pay $250 an hour for an accountant. We just automate a lot of the stuff, automatic bill pay. All of that stuff comes from, like you say, the algorithm. So yeah, it is going to track your behavior. It's going to track your spending power, track your location, track your usage, track your performance, track conversations in the midst of your area, mass data dumps at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and then throw out a bunch of ads selling you stuff based on your activity from yesterday. Look, we're on the same page, and it sent all that stuff to your phone as you're moving. The phone is going to definitely be your mental ankle, and it is going to definitely tell you what to do and when to do it and how to do it and what to buy and when to buy it. All that is going to be convenient, and convenience is going to sell, and it costs money for convenience. That's really what it is. Now, for the investors, since this change is happening, this episode reveals two things. First, the broader AI market sentiment is becoming more sensitive. Even with stellar earnings, a headline about government policies can now move the whole sector to a completely different location. Second, the key thing to watch for Nvidia isn't which AI company is up or down, but rather two bigger threats: major changes in hyperscaler spending from giants like Microsoft and Amazon, or any direct government action like export controls or antitrust suits targeting Nvidia itself. For the AI labs, the lesson is that political risks is now a major factor because politics are now involved in AI development. And the federal policies can start to favor a handful of vendors willing to align with Washington's agenda, which actually has local government creating laws to benefit specific individuals and depriving everyone else. So that Walmart account, how much does it cost you per month? The regular Walmart account usually runs you about $100 a month. I mean, no, it's $100 a year for the annual membership. If you can potentially get it on a discount depending on what promotions they have, where you're paying for $50 a year. And if you're paying for $50 a year, you are in a position where it is less than $2 a year, less, well, around about $5, because like $50 a year is like 10 months is $50. It's about $5 a month, so it's about $3 or $4 a month of usage for Walmart to deliver to the house. And uh, if you're buying items over $35 worth of purchase, they don't even charge you for shipping. So the $6.99 that they charge you for shipping is waived if you're buying over $35 of per transaction worth of stuff. So if you need groceries and you're going to buy $50 worth of groceries, in $50 a month groceries twice a month and get them delivered to your house and not have to pay for shipping. You don't have to put any extra money down for a tip. They drop the groceries off on your doorstep. You don't have to go to the store. You can order everything that's too heavy for you to carry to your house from the store, have it dropped off at your house, and then go to the store and pick up all the light stuff. You could have gone to the store and forgot something, and then just at your house, like, oh, dip, I forgot X, Y, and Z something, and then order $35 worth of things you forgot and have it shipped over to the house. In natural disasters and rain and snow and inclement weathers where you don't feel like going outside, your body's hurting, whatever, you don't want to be stuck in the traffic, or you got something else to do, you can order certain things, and then you can select what time of day it drops it off, so that if you're supposed to be back at the house by 6, you can have it dropped off by 6:30. As soon as you get home, 15, 20 minutes after you get home, groceries are dropped off at your house for like $3 a month. Walmart.com. And they give you discounts on gas, 10% off per gallon. Uh, Only way that could be profitable if it was like a paper route. Well, no, because when you think about it, $100 a month for a million Americans is $100 million just for the service. That's just for the service. If they're paying one person $3 to $5 per delivery, right? Those people are going to be delivering for a paper route in order to drop it off, almost like Uber or Lyft or Postmates or Uber Eats. The company is going to make millions of dollars because whether they use it or not, they're paying for the membership. But they're also guaranteeing that the customers are going to buy from Walmart, because instead of going to Target or Aldi's or Harps or whatever else, because they have to leave the house to go to those stores, they can actually order from Walmart.com and get it directly to delivered directly to the house, which encourages increased sales in the store. Instead of selling the food, you sell everything around the food. Uh, Order the day before and drop at your house. Yeah, you can order it the day before and drop off at the house. Uh, what is what is equity? Equity is the money. He said, I don't seem to get the concept. Okay, so he said a loyalty program. So, real quick, for those who don't understand, what is equity? Equity is the amount invested. That's right, Michael, selling convenience. Equity is the amount invested. Equality is the equal access to. So when it comes to equality, which is different from equity, equality, two people go to a dealership to buy a car. They can both buy the car. That's equality. Um, Equity is the amount of money that has to be put down on the purchase of the car. For example, a person who can afford it can buy the car cash up front. The equal ability to buy that same car, the person who can afford it can get a grant from the government to pay for a portion of the car, and then they pay for the rest. That's equity, equal equity. You're not treated the same, but you get the same stuff. You both walk away with a car, but you both didn't have to put the same amount into the game to get the car. That's the difference between equality and equity. So the lack of equality is that you can't buy something because of your race. You can't buy something because of your gender. That is the lack of equality. The lack of equity is that you can't buy something because you're poor. That's the lack of equity. For example, equity versus equality. Equity, well, no, equality, everybody can go to college. That's equality. But the people who are poor can't afford college. Equal equity is the poor people get government grants and loans to pay for college, where the non poor people can just pay for their way into college. That's equal equity. That's the difference. I have money, you are using my money. No, actually, one person has money and the other person is using the government funds. So I ordered food from the supermarket yesterday and it was promptly delivered to the house next door. That does happen. I call them to get my shit re-delivered. I'm like, no, fuck that. I didn't get it. And sometimes if you catch it, you can go outside and grab your groceries and bring them inside. Like, no, fuck that. DEI. No, that yeah, well, it's almost like DEI, but the DEI programs that the government had wasn't doing their part, and that's why Donald Trump had to disband them when he first jumped in. Neighbors love you. Hey, man, I didn't have some groceries get dropped off at my house from a neighbor, and I was sitting here like, well, if he knock on the door, I'll hand it to him, but he don't knock on the door. We having barbecue tonight. Now, what are your key takeaways from all of what's happened today? First and foremost, President Trump's executive orders on housing is a major policy shift that tries to level the playing field for home buyers, bringing more equal equity to the market, cutting off large investors' access to federally backed financing. And it strategically includes an exception for building new build to rent communities, aiming to redirect Wall Street capital towards increasing the nation's housing supply. You said, I hope you had cookies. Nah, I get rid of all the cookies. No, 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 no. Here, I was like ground beef. There was some bologna or whatever. I think it was like a pack of sliced honey ham or whatever. And then like so it was almost like sandwich stuff. And I'm sitting over here like, we don't buy this shit. I'm like, big old 3 pound tube of ground beef. I'm like, we don't buy this kind of stuff, but that's all right. It's on my doorstep. It was on my doorstep. Some gun knocked on my door. My dog started barking. Dog don't never bark. And I was sitting over here like, all right, let's go grab. Because the kind of stuff that I would buy is like, you know, roast or turkeys or large stacks of chicken, stuff like that. Vegetables to prep with because I cook at the house, not like sandwich prep, not a jar of mayonnaise. Like I resemble the kind of person that smears mayonnaise on everything? Raisins in the potato salad, not happening. Now, the second thing that we learned today, um, this action is going to be a part that the action of Donald Trump putting a stop to big business buying up all the homes is going to be a broader governing philosophy. The push for national rules in housing mirrors similar efforts to centralize control over voting laws as well as the AI regulations, showing a clear pattern of federal preemption over state authority. And the third thing is the dramatic ban of AI company Anthropic serves as a stark warning. It shows a willingness to use the full power of the government to enforce its agenda, setting a precedent that Washington, not Silicon Valley, will define the ethical boundaries for critical technologies like AI with major consequences for companies and investors that don't cooperate with the agenda. Ultimately, this is a story about a reassertion of federal powers across multiple fronts of American economy and its society at large. The question is, will these moves restore fairness and security as intended, or will they create new sets of unintended consequences? I want to know what you guys think. Is the housing order a genuine game changer? And what do you make of the government's hardline stance on AI ethics? What's your observation on the mandatory requirement of throwing up your state ID so that you can go and vote? How you doing, Claudia? Special shout out to Claudia. She walked in at the last moment. You must have just got off from work. I want to know from you guys what your thoughts are on the changes that we were talking about throughout the day. And if you guys found the breakdowns and informative information that we've been providing beneficial to you, make sure that you guys hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already for more explanations of the policies and economic forces that shapes the world that we invest in. I mean, it's all right. You can come in late. You showed up. It's been almost a week and a half since I heard from you. Uh, it's just that we covered the whole topic. So today we were talking about how the government as it is changing the way they're doing business, and they're shutting down big businesses of capabilities to mass purchasing up all the single family homes, which is going to start leaving more single family homes able to be bought by the individuals who can afford to buy them. And then they're putting a stop to individuals who are not showing proof of citizenship from being able to vote. And then they put a stop to a specific AI company from doing business with the United States government so that the United States government can mainstream automation towards using missiles, foreign or domestically pointed, which change the way people invest in money. It's going to the housing market is going to change the way people buy houses because you're going to have more single family houses available for single families, and you're going to have more voters that vote being verified as American, and you're going to have less technology right now that's automatically pointing missiles at your license plate when you run a traffic light, since it's going to be man powered at this point by open AI instead of anthropic. But uh it's we covered a lot of stuff over the past 2 hours. Steven said AI needs way more regulation. In my opinion, this is a good step. Oh, I perfectly agree. I perfectly agree. My biggest concern is before my grandchildren are my age that we are going to have, and that's like over the next 40 to 70, well, the next 60 to 70 years, 60 to 80 years. I believe that we're going to have too much reliance on technology. Technology is going to be running the government, and then technology is going to be taking action in places that technology shouldn't be taking action. Me and Mr. Pitts talked about this 2 years ago. If you start utilizing AI to replace your police force, while yeah, you will have less police people negatively impacting civilian rights. You would have more technology showing zero tolerance towards the existing laws where we have 200, 400-year-old laws that we don't remember. You know, it is still against the law to spit on American soil. It's a form of treason. Could you imagine a police robot made by Tesla with Digitake firmware on its scenario, and you get arrested by because you just had something in your throat, you spit on the ground, and then you got arrested for treason and was put in jail. And then you go to the judge, and the judge is like guilty, zero tolerance, because the judge is a robot too. You know that there are laws that we forgot about. Some of us don't even know about that have been around long before our grandparents were alive, and those laws are still usable. And while those laws are still usable, the fact is that when machines start controlling what is right and what is not right, going off of the probability of sound decision making, you recognizing that humans do not have sound decision making skills when they're in the midst of confrontation. Machines are going to use hindsight and then show little to no tolerance towards the fluctuations of human error. and then you're going to be ending up in jail for some of the most reckless stuff, some of the most simplest things that had a human been involved. You would have got a stern warning, maybe a fine, and you could have went on about your day. Now you're doing 25 to life because you fell asleep in a salon under a hair dryer because that's against the law. FX Trader says AI will take over everything because people are lazy in general. I completely agree. It is the effort in waiting. The more we automate, the more the more machines take over. The less we can rely on our partner to back our play, the more we're going to be overwhelmed by technology. And we're really the technology made by men is really replacing the lack of effort that women put in their relationships. And that's the reason why the next gen robot is a female. That companionship robot that like seven or eight of the biggest tech companies are building at $150,000 a robot are all female robots. The next gen after that are going to be male robots because after men pay $150,000 per robot to have a female that's not going to disrespect them, women will be able to buy the upgraded version, which is dudes, for like 20 grand for the exact same thing. And then we're not even going to have human interaction. She said, I prefer a human officer than a robot. I do too. I just wish that they were trained better. Have you guys seen iRobot? Yeah, we were talking about that. Good movie. It is a fairly good movie, but it does raise a lot of awareness. iRobot partnered with Terminator 1 and 2 and 3 and Sarah Jane Chronicles and Dollhouse, if you really want to think about it. And Continuum, if you take that into consideration as well. When too much tech takes over too much human decision making, it's a problem. And then the Matrix, where we start using humans as batteries. He says, if it is part human, like RoboCop situations, it might happen. Then we'll say it is man powered. Bro, RoboCop, he was taken over too. RoboCop was taken over too. It was a human brain inside of a machine, which is cybernetics. And the problem with that is because I talked about this before too. Elon Musk has created tech that is implanted into your skull where brain waves control electronics for artificial limbs that are going to be the next generation of cybernetics. You're going to have a full robot arm that is controlled neurologically. You're going to have a full robot leg that is controlled neurologically. It is the makings of Robocop. The problem I have with that software is that when your brain waves can control computers, reverse engineering computers can control brain waves. When your motor functions that can be controlled by your brain can control software, the downside of that is that somebody can hack it the way they hacked those Teslas in a closed network and drove them off cliffs and into construction zones. That somebody can hack it and then control the human body, like that movie Game On, where the dude could think for himself but couldn't control his own body because his body was being controlled by a machine. It's a thing. And the military trying to take Anthropic and force automated systems that can control military projects. That is exactly what you start building. You start building soldiers that have the physique of killing machines that do not have the mentality of it and replace their mentality with the software that will make the body do what it needs to be done. The best soldier is the one that has no individual thought power. It operates on instructions alone. The one that has no remorse does what it's told. Take out the target in the school, eliminate all targets in the school. And I say it like that because I mean Columbine, right? And it's scary, it's terrifying, but that's the best soldiers in the world. The ones that are not going to say no, the ones that are not going to think about the fallout, the ones that do not consider collateral damage, and the only ones that have that capability are machines. Either rationalizing the best way to execute a mission to achieve its goal, or the ones that will unilaterally follow the instructions from the individual that has the authority to order the execution of the instruction. That's it. Those are going to be the best soldiers. Now, what does that mean for the rest of us? Well, putting them bad boys is out there, 20,000 of them at a time on our daily streets, telling us what to do. That's when we start having a human rebellion against machines. We typically come together as people once we realize that we're all being fucked over unanimously. That's when we come together as a people. I mean, look at what's going on with the ice raids. The only reason why Americans are working together to stop the ice raids from happening is because for the first time, we all agree that the way they're doing it is a little bit fucked up. Doesn't mean that it ain't right. It just means that the way they're doing it is fucked up. Because every person out there protesting can agree that if you're not supposed to be here, you don't have the paperwork, you refuse to try to get the paperwork, you don't belong here. And everybody who protests can agree that they're not supposed to be here, but since they've already gotten here, they've already been here for a couple decades, why make them leave? Because you're not supposed to be here. If you gave up your right to be here, you're not supposed to be here. The United States has been the only country up until 2025 that allowed people who weren't welcome to stay and provide asylum and provide resources that were provided by the government, that was provided from taxpayers who are responsible for the country because we earned a right to be here. We were born here, we were raised here, we pay into the pot. And the people who don't pay into the pot get benefits from it. And that's one of the reasons why they are not supposed to be here. We got to remove them out of the the expenses. Ultimately, that's really the whole purpose of removing them is because, according to Donald Trump, we spend more money to keep them here than what we would to remove them. While we will spend a lot of money now to remove them, we would overall, over the course of 10 or 20 years, save money in the country by not spending money on people who don't belong here. That's exactly what he said before he started enforcing the real IDs in May of 25. He made it clear in 25 that that's why it was a thing. So as a result, the people that are out there screaming in the streets and getting run over and shot and all of this other stuff, they're out there for the wrong reason, in my personal opinion. Because truth is that if they're not coming to get your kinfolk, and I understand if it's your grandmama, your auntie, your uncle, your child that's being deported because you didn't get the paperwork done before he put that executive order out. I understand. If it ain't your kinfolk, then what is you out there for? Because they wasn't in front of the house that was about to get ambushed by the raid. They were in the center of the city, kicking up shit as the people passed through. They might have been on their way to Ohio and couldn't make it because they used the car instead of dropping down like the National Guard in some choppers. The the mentality is not the same. Now, machines would have put a stop to that. That's just the long of the short. And that's going to be the reason why DHS is still being shut down right now because Democrats have not agreed to allow DHS to get funding until Republicans agree that DHS agents are wearing body cameras with their interactions with civilians so that when they do put their hands on a civilian, you've got the play by play of what led up to that. Because the two people that got murdered in less than 3 months over DHS decisions, all you saw was the conflict of the murder, the 20 or 30 seconds before the murder. You don't see what led to the car trying to go around the other car before the lady got shot. You don't see what led to the guy being jumped by six police officers or six federal agents before one of the federal agents started opening fire on a guy who couldn't even defend himself, lying on the ground being kicked and punched. So you can't see what led up to that. And even though, like Michael told me before, that the guy allegedly had a gun, your Second Amendment constitutional right to bear firearms with the constitutional carry laws that were enforced in 24 and 25. The fact is that you can be outside with one as long as you're not committing a crime. But if you do commit a crime, that warrants your actual arrest, not the elimination of your life. So, while I agree they should have been arrested for whatever actions that are not supported by law, I disagree with the decisions that were made that led to the loss of life of individuals that could have been sitting in jail. And to the second magnitude, the people who marched on Washington did not get shot. They attacked the White House and did not get shot. So why is it can thousands of Americans attack the nation's capital and survive unharmed, go to jail, get a pardon, but the people standing in the streets get gunned down? You can't make up for that. When the people who went to jail, who marched on Washington, they got the pardon, the country is able to make up for any wrongs that were done. My bad, you're released. But when you take them people life, you can't be like, my bad. If the police officer made a bad call and arrested a person that shouldn't have been arrested, you can at least say, oops, my bad. Here's a few $100,000 for your wrongful arrest. But when you take the person's life, you can't say, oops, my bad. And it requires the family of that person to sue the government for unnecessarily taking the life of a civilian that should not have had their life taken. But that person, no matter how many millions you get off of a lawsuit settlement, that person doesn't get their family member back. Now, first person accountability, y'all should not be out there starting no stuff with nobody with no assault rifle. I don't care if you got an assault rifle too. Y'all should not be out there with your dog chasing them people down. You should not be out there with your whatever going up against their assault rifle because they are told to eliminate all threats. Your responsibility is to peacefully stand on the sidewalk, not block traffic, not block the crosswalk, and argue your position, but do not get in their way. But from what I hear, they're starting to arrest people for obstruction of justice. So if you stand in front of an ICE vehicle, you go into jail. But because this is a federal action being executed, one of the things that not a lot of people are paying attention to is that if you get arrested by the feds, you're going to get federal level charges. You're not going to get some domestic city, whatever. You're going to end up in federal court, something close to a freaking court martial, where your opportunity to spend time in Guantanamo Bay is highly likely. And you'll be in a black site with no phone call because your rights don't exist with domestic terrorism charges. Have you seen those people protesting on the streets, how they act? Yes. And that's why they're getting gunned down. And like I said, I don't agree with them getting gunned down, but I also believe that you start stuff that you can't handle. You certain decisions that you're not supposed to make that you make that puts you in a position that starts becoming outside of your control. And once it gets out of your control, there is nothing you can do besides ride the wave of consequences. But there were several decisions that people made, such as leaving their house to go to the protest, protesting when the people came up, continuing to protest in front of the agents, yelling and cursing out the agents, throwing stuff at the agents, or staying in the vicinity of somebody who started throwing stuff at the agents, refusing to leave, not taking a behinds home, then fist fighting with the agent. Then they end up on the ground. Now they're fist fighting a bunch of agents, and then you can't breathe no more. That's it's a series of bad choices. He said the people that marched on Washington got special dietary food while locked up and full pardons. Right, but the people who marched on Washington did not get shot down. If at best two or three people got pepper sprayed, they were able to wash their face and they could still see. But out of the two or three people that got pepper sprayed versus the two plus people that got murdered, you ain't bouncing back off of that. You know what I mean? And that's why like so Republicans say the Democrats are idiots, and they say that out of three Democrats, one is dumb and the other two are dumb for thinking that the first one is smart. But the truth of the matter is that the Democrats are the ones that saying, hey, as idiotic as these protesters are out here, the people with the assault rifles have to hold higher levels of responsibility for their decisions because they are not, in fact, in a life threatening situation when you have five assault rifles against 30,000 unarmed individuals. You're not in a life threatening situation. Now, the first person that throws a rock changes that dynamic. But when you've got six agents beating up one civilian, even though you've got six guns to one gun, you do not have overwhelming force on the agent. You have overwhelming force on the civilian. So just because you saw the gun, kick the gun out of the way, tase him, mace him. He can't shoot squat if he can't see shit, if his eyes are burning. But why were they able to hit the person holding the cell phone in the face with a riot spray, close contact riot spray, enough to kill the person, right? Just from breathing in so much cayenne pepper. But they couldn't spray the guy on the ground with the cayenne pepper and mace him down so that he could stop resisting. Like I said before, with the six agents that were there, each person could have grabbed the limb before the gun came out. And you have one person on each arm and one person on each leg. Nobody can stop five 200-pound men. You just can't. I know I can't. If each person's got an arm, I can't do shit but stand here and let the extra person spray me in the face. Now I can't see. You want to wash that off? Cooperate. They'll let me sit there and suffer until I'm willing to cooperate. At least still alive when it's over. That's my observation. Is I use a little cayenne pepper in my cooking sometimes. I do too. But have you ever accidentally got that stuff on your hands and then rubbed your eyes with it? You ever had some cayenne pepper that you was using to sprinkle on the food and then you cut you up some onions and then the onions made your eyes water and then you rub cayenne pepper on your face with the onions on your hands and stuff and you got that stuff in your eye? You know how much that shit burns? You ain't doing shit. You done dropped the knife. You done dropped the gun. You done threw your wallet on the ground. You all right, take me somewhere. You know what I mean? She said yes today. ah, and this is why they made TV dinners. Exactly. He cried like a baby. So, with that knowledge, both of y'all know firsthand that a little bit of cayenne pepper and a little bit of your onion, and you ain't doing shit else for a good grip. Which also means that with a little bit of cayenne pepper and a little bit of onion, they could have made that woman not drive her car because she couldn't see to go nowhere, and the dude not be able to do nothing with his gun because he wouldn't be able to see to pull it out. They would have been so busy doing this with their hands that they would not have been able to do nothing else. They still could have survived that situation, but unfortunately it didn't. So Democrats are responsible for the government being shut down this time around. I'm gonna give them credit for that because Donald Trump was responsible for the government shutdown the first time. And the Democrats are the ones that are responsible for putting forth the bills to put a stop to the big business buying up all the single family homes so that middle class and lower class individuals can afford to buy homes. While the Republican Donald Trump is putting forth the effort to reinforce that, and a Republican senator is backing up the play, a Democrat decided it is time to stop for the ultra rich buying up all the property from the ultra poor. I agree. Now, Republicans who think that that's a dumb move, put your arguments in the comment section and tell me why that's not a good move. Any Republican that's making that argument, ask yourself before you put up that counter argument, do you own your own house? Because if you do, you can make an argument. But if you don't, this law is being built for you. She said, my mom, hey, she could be an ultra Republican all day long. But if she don't own her own house, she can't argue, oh, that's bullshit. The poor people need to just get a better job. Because usually what happens is in these political debates, a uh, working class Republican at best, if not a lower class Republican. And a lower class Republican is anyone making less than 79,000, 72,000 a year. If you're making less than 72,000 a year and you claim to be a Republican, you're in the wrong spot. You're in the wrong position if you are making less than 75,000 a year and you're claiming to be a Republican because all bills passed are conditioned for big business when they're taking money from taxation and everything and redirecting somewhere else. Yes, he is doing right now this housing thing for the individuals who can afford a house but are being outbidded. But the people who can afford a house that are being outbidded are making more than 75,000 a year. Okay, less than 200,000 a year, but more than 75,000 a year. So if you're making less than 75,000 a year, most bills passed by the Republicans don't benefit you. So if you're voting Republican, by all means do so, but think about how your decision impacts your wallet. Because if you benefit from food stamps, if you benefit from Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, VA benefits, all of that stuff was put in place by Democrats. The insurance coverage for the generic medications, all of that was put in place by Democrats. The rebates that they just did with the FDIC approving medications, all of that stuff was adjusted to better benefit lower income individuals. So if you're making over 75,000 a year, then you're supposed to be able to vote Republican to keep more money in your pocket. But if you're making less than 75,000 a year, you're supposed to be voting Democrat to keep more money in your pocket. It's the same dynamic because Democrats takes benefits from tax dollars and gives it back to the people. Republicans take taxation out of your pocket so that you don't spend as much money on the benefits that are getting given back to the other people. That's the dynamic. So if you want to keep your money in your pocket, you have to look on which side of the fence you are. Are you on the side of the fence that's receiving benefits from the government, or are you on the side of the fence that's spending a lot of money on taxation, which requires you to then have to get deductions and rebates so that you don't have to pay all those taxations? He said Ron Dula, um, or DeLeo, who runs the biggest hedge fund in the world and is a billionaire company, about the income gap in the US. Oh, so he complains about the income gap in the United States. Well, there's a huge income gap because you have majority of individuals, just like Claudia, that are working two jobs. And then she's going to get into a relationship with somebody else who's working two jobs. The U.S. Census is going to count those two individuals as two incomes, but it's not two incomes; it's four in one household. And that combined income is going to be one joint income. And the census is going to make it seem like, oh, every American is working 40 hours a week. Fuck, most Americans work more than 40 hours a week. Most Americans work two jobs at minimum 40 hours a week on each job, upward of 85 to 90 hours a week for both jobs. And then and then they barely see each other, you know? So it's never happening. It's not. She said not unless married. No, even when married. The U.S. Census considers the working class between 72 and $79,000 a year because the working class, which is the top end of being poor, is making $1,765 a week. I don't even know how to split that money up off the top of my head right now, but I know that that's upward of 40 or $50 an hour. Not too many people are making that kind of money. The average individual that's making about $20 an hour, $25 an hour, is working 45 to 65 hours a week, or well, 55 hours a week on average, because usually it's 40 hours plus 15 hours of overtime. So about 55 hours a week is what the average person is working on their first job, plus their second job, about 55 hours a week on their second job, offsetting both of them. You're looking at the individual person bringing in upward of about $800 or $900 a week, typically between 55 and $70,000. Well, actually, depending on where you're working, because some women that are working in nursing and teaching are making closer to 45,000 a year, but people who are working in restaurants are making between 55 and $70,000 a year. But you got to be making between 72 and 79,000 a year. That's middle management. Middle management is making that kind of money. Working two jobs is tough for one's health. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I tell you guys about all the different ways to automate a second or third income so that you don't have to be in two places at once. You could be generating money from the house while you're at work. You can be generating money in your sleep while you're at work, and the extra money being made can offset your expenses, which allows you to do two things: work less so that you can get more rest, and then focus more on other ways to make more money, because otherwise you're going to work until you die. And since we call it burning the candle at both ends, you're working a day shift, 6 to 8 hours on the day shift, and then you're working a night shift with an hour apart that gives you enough time to clock out and go to your second job, and then you're working another 8 hours, and then you're going to go home. So out of 18 hours, you've been at work for that whole 18 hours divided between two jobs. 9 hours on one job, 9 hours on another job. Then you go back to your house and then you go take a nap for 4 to 6 hours and then you wake up and do it all over again. That is how we live life in America for the working class, for the people that are in the lower income status. Okay. And we're still not making enough money. We have to have a roommate. We get into a bad relationship with somebody and share the expenses. Kids come about, and now we're sharing the expenses and paying for this joint debt. And we stay together for the sake of the kids, and we have toxic relationships because we can't afford to move out. So with Donald Trump making a lot of these changes, a $150,000 house that would require you to make about $3,000 a month. If you're paying a $3,000 a month mortgage, I mean a $3,000 a month rent, or $1,800 a month rent, then you can pay a $1,000 a month mortgage. It's easy for you to pay a $1,000 a month mortgage if you're already paying $2,500 for rent. It's easy for you to find a house for sale where the mortgage over 30 years is cheaper than your rent for the next 12 months. And the difference between the mortgage and the rent is that the rent is going to go up $100 to $200 every year. The mortgage is going to stay the same for uh, 300 years. Well, I mean 30 years. So, encouraging people to get your own. Yeah, the difference between owning your house versus renting a house is that owning a house, you have to deal with all the maintenance. So if something breaks, you got to fix it. Renting a house, you don't got to fix shit. You just put in a repair request and they come and fix it. They cut the grass for you, blah, 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 blah. But in apartment complexes, you got to fight for parking. You can't find a space near your house. Now you got to walk across town to get into your house. You know what I mean? You got neighbors that you don't like. You can't say nothing because they're on the other side of the wall. It's not good. Yeah, oh yeah, you should move. You definitely should move. Which is another reason why I teach you guys about how to set up online occupations where you're getting paid through the computer. That makes it easier for you to relocate because if you're making $3,000 or $4,000 a month off of your computer, then you can move to a cheaper location and keep making the same quantity of money. If you're working at a specific brick and mortar company, if that company doesn't exist where you're trying to go, you can't relocate. If you work at a Waffle House, you can move to most states around the country. But who wants to work in a restaurant their whole life? If you're working for an Amazon, you can work in a warehouse and almost anywhere in the country. But who wants to work in a warehouse for the rest of their life? You know what I mean? But if you're working off of a computer and you start making $5,000 or $6,000 a month off of the computer, you can get you a digital nomad visa and go and live in Japan or China or Thailand or the Philippines or Venezuela or Spain or any other cheap country. Estonia, we just covered Estonia last week. And for the same quantity of money that it would take for you to struggle in New York or California, for the same quantity of money, you'll be living an upscale lifestyle with less effort. And you're just doing what you do off of the computer. All you need is stable internet. How do you decide when to buy instead of rent? Okay, you buy when you have good credit score, good payment history for the last 2 years, and you have found a house that qualifies for down payment assistance, and you can negotiate with the seller for them to pay the closing costs on your behalf and work that into the price of the mortgage. That's when you buy. If you've got bad credit and you don't qualify for the mortgage, you got a bad payment history where you're not going to qualify for the mortgage. If you have a foreclosure, not a foreclosure, well, yeah, if you have a foreclosure, you're not going to be able to rent anything. I mean, you're not going to be able to buy anything. If you have a bankruptcy in the last 2 years, you're not going to be able to get a loan for anything. When you don't qualify for the loan, that's when you rent. When you qualify for the loan, that's when you buy. Plain and simple. Because with down payment assistance, you don't need $20,000 up front to cover the cost of the property. You need the down payment assistance to cover the cost of the property. With down payment assistance, the only thing that's not covered by down payment assistance is the closing costs. If you negotiate with the seller where they pay the closing costs and your lender pays for everything else, you just pack up your shit and move. The difference between $3,000 down for a rental property versus $3,000 for the movers to move you to a house that you own is that if your landlord sells the house, your new landlord can kick you out when your lease is up. As long as you pay the mortgage, you will always have this house. Even if you lose your job and put two tenants in the place that's going to pay the rent for you, you will always have this house. So whenever you qualify for a mortgage, that's when it's time to buy. Now, when we talking about seasonally, when is it better to buy than other times? Okay, quarter 1 of the year, that's when January, February, March, that is when you can fill out the homestead tax credit. After March, you need to negotiate partial payment of taxation on the property because the homestead tax credit gives you the capabilities of not having to pay taxes on up to a certain amount of the property. When you don't qualify for the home buyer tax, the homestead tax credit, you negotiate with the seller on going half C's or whatever, where they pay for the first number of months that they had the property, you pay for the rest of the time that you have the property, and then you just buy the property, and then you pay taxes on it after that. But usually, if you got like an FHA or something like that, they will incorporate the taxes, the property taxes, into the loan. So if you don't get the home buyer the homestead credit the first year, they're working it into the loan on the first year, but then they're going to offset it on the second year, which means your monthly payments are going to be lower. So you have to live in the house at least 5 years to make it work financially. No, um, it it depends on the cost of the house. Because if you're big eyed and greedy, and you're trying to get the biggest house that you can get, even if you're living by yourself, you're trying to get the biggest house you can get, where every dollar is spent, then you're starting to deal with the opportunity cost because if you don't make enough money, you can't afford the mortgage. But if you're looking at your one person, you only need a 2 bedroom, 1 bathroom, two people, 2 bedroom, 1 bathroom, three people, 2 bedroom, or 3 bedroom, 2 bathroom. If you have kids, 1 bedroom for each adult, 1 bedroom for the child, and 1 bathroom for the child and 1 bathroom for the adults to share. You look at the size house that you're trying to get, and then you look at what areas that the house is the most affordable that has actually been constructed to be move-in ready. Once you find a house that's move-in ready, you go and get it. The cost benefit is that if you're finding a house that is not overly priced in an overpriced neighborhood, you're likely going to save $300 to $500 a month on what you would have spent on your mortgage versus what you would have spent on your rent. Because a house in, say, Apollo Beach, Florida, might have a $3,000 a month rent. That same house would have a $2,500 a month mortgage. That same 4 bedroom, 3 bathroom house would have a $2,500 a month mortgage for a $500,000 house, but you would be spending $3,000 a month for the rent. Why? Because the homeowner would charge the $2,500 a month on a mortgage and then pocket the $500 a month, where $250 of it would go towards repairs and $250 of it would be their profit on you staying in their property. They're going to overcharge you. Rent is overcharged mortgage. That's what people don't understand. There's a massive profit in that, typically 25 to 30%. So you're likely to walk away with 25 to 30% profit on buying a house versus renting one. Now, if you don't want responsibility, it's easier for you to rent. It's not cheaper. It's easier for you to rent because you don't have to fix anything, you don't have to paint anything, you don't have to rebuild anything. But if you're willing to do it yourself, it's cheaper to own something. The same way it's cheaper to learn how to drive a manual shift car than it is to buy an automatic car because the transmission is takes more effort for you to drive the car, but there's less stuff to fix. It's cheaper to fix. It's easier to get done. You can piece it together instead of replacing the whole damn transmission. Do you think that the property taxes will be abolished in Florida? I haven't heard anything about that yet. But if they, because you have certain states that have state level taxes versus federal level taxes, and states that have state level taxes is still going to require you to pay some type of property taxes. If they are in the works with abolishing property taxes, that's because somebody passed a bill in local government on a state level to abolish the state's requirement to collect property taxes. But the budget that the state has for a lot of the things that it pays for comes from things like property taxes. You have certain states that have registration taxes on your vehicle. So even after you bought the vehicle, you paid the purchase tax on the car, but every year that you own a vehicle, you pay taxes on owning a vehicle. Some states actually have that. That's on the state level. Um, if they abolish property, well, but instead of abolishing the property taxes, one of the things that they're doing is they're offering that homestead tax credit. If this is your primary home, they will give you a tax credit. So one of the requirements is that you live there majority of the time, 90% of the time, you live there. And they will give you that tax credit. Now they have the thing where after a certain age, They have a tax restriction thing on there where after I think like 69 years old, they stop reassessing your property for tax inflation, which prevents the value of your house from going up, but it prevents the taxes owed on a property from going up. So instead of them officially abolishing um, taxation on the property, they just give you a credit for it where they're paying it on your behalf. But that's for homesteads. Now, rental properties are not homesteads. Rental properties are still going to pay that taxation. If they abolish taxation, um it's not going to benefit the government because commercial properties are still getting property taxes. Uh you said remember when I told you a 25-year-old football player took his own life and you responded your response is that you don't care because it doesn't impact your finances. Yes, I do remember that. And I also remember telling you that if you came to my channel talking about something completely different from the show's core arguments, that you would end up getting blocked off of the show. So you're asking me, do I think that you're a bad person? No, absolutely not. I don't think that I'm a bad person. But that'll be the last time you ask me a sideways question like that. Because actually, at the end of the day, I'm going to tell you yet again, this show is designed to help individuals make better decisions with their lives. This show is designed to help them think about different ways and find new opportunities to make, save, and invest money so that they can build a financial plan that helps them retire from their life, from whatever work job they've got going on right now. All of the stuff that we talk about is how life impacts your ability to make, save, and invest money. So when you jumped on the show before and you told me about some football player that doesn't turn me a profit, that he lost his life, we have hundreds of thousands of murders per second. We have hundreds of thousands of accidents that leads to deaths per second. And that does not change the way we get up and go to work every day. It doesn't change the way we cash our checks, and it doesn't change the way we pay our bills. The only thing that changes about what happens when people lose their lives is how many guns we buy. Okay? So you can ask me about the Epstein list and get blocked because I don't care about it because it does not impact how the 80 something thousand people that are on the show make money. It doesn't impact how they spend that money. It doesn't impact how they save that money, and it doesn't impact how they budget that money. So no, the what impacts the average American is trying to leave their house to go to the grocery store and get murdered by a federal agent. That impacts us. Probably should buy body armor. That's where the financial decision comes in at. So they're in a position where the people, see, I warned him, he didn't listen. He came out the woodwork. I said, come with the recklessness, get kicked out. I have no problem with you disagreeing with whatever concepts that I talk about on the show. I have no problems with individuals putting up a contradictory position, such as B Money over here says property taxes won't be abolished until our government is abolished. I have absolutely no problem with counter arguments because I don't know everything about everything. I know enough about enough to tell you guys how we should pay more attention to how life is changing around us during a era where drastic change could benefit those of us who used to not be able to benefit. And since we are not from the past, because most of the people on the channel right now are over the age of 30 years old, we have not, in the first 20 years of our adulthood, made better decisions, which is why 75% of America is financially destitute. Okay. Doesn't matter if you're $250,000 a year income or not, you're living from paycheck to paycheck. That is why the government shutdown dramatically impacts the largest majority of American people because we do not have extra money set aside to keep us from going broke if we don't get paid three paychecks in a row. You end up homeless. So it doesn't matter Bad Girls Club fighting on TV. Doesn't matter if LeBron James dropped the ball on purpose in basketball. Doesn't matter if the Patriots didn't win the Super Bowl. No, it does not matter. Why? Because that does not impact the way you make, save, and invest money. One of the things that you have to prioritize in life is how does the things inside of your immediate access that you can control impacts you. You cannot control what other people do on the other side of the world. You cannot control what other people do on the other side of this country. You can't control what other people do on the other side of the block. But what you can control is how you interact with that. Instead of you going outside during protest, you might order food to be delivered to the house. That keeps you from being involved in the chaos that's outside. When we start talking about the difference between voting Republican versus voting Democrat, it is not about whether or not I like a Democratic Party or a Republican Party. It is about the fact that Republican decisions takes less taxation from the successful and wealthy, and the Democratic Party provides more resources to the financially challenged. That's the difference between the two parties. If you're not making enough money and you have to rely on a government funding source, you are not going to get as much if you vote to go Republican when Republicans are abolishing those services. But you're not going to find, as a Republican voter, as much benefit if you're low income. So if you're high income, benefiting from voting Republican doesn't help you because high income means that at some point taxation is going to happen to offset all of these government expenses, and the people who make more money feel that percentage more. 35% from $1 million hurts a hell of a lot more than 35% from 100,000, right? So tax deductions for the rich aid the rich in staying rich. Tax deductions from the poor keep the poor from taking their grocery money and giving it to the government. But whatever does get given to the government, if it's not given back on the tax return, it's given back in benefits. Financial aid for college, Medicaid, Medicare, um, um, food stamps, WIC, TANF programs, babysitters. But those systems are put in place from Democrats. You need both of them. No one party is better than the next. You need them both. You need the Republicans to maintain your Second Amendment right to bear firearms, and you need the Democrats to make sure that you can buy food for your kids. You need them both. So there's never a scenario where I'm going to say, "Ah, man, let's pay attention to the." Right now, we got the Winter Olympics going on. I tried covering the Winter Olympics before, and I thought about it, and I'm like, man, we talk about everything on under the sun on this show, but we don't have a purpose. And then I decided and this was over a year and a half ago. I decided our purpose is going to show people that not only can you not be broke, but you can also retire. You don't have to work until you die. That I'll sleep when I'm dead mentality. You're going to work until you die. You don't have to do that. And for the first 9 months before the man got elected, I had an entire mission where this entire podcast was redirected to showing people how we could not be broke. We could live under the new Republican model and not be broke. We could go from being part of the lower class to being part of the middle class. The one of the big gaps, like I think FX Trader was talking about how the one guy talked about how there is a economic gap between the rich and the poor. That's because 72% of Americans waste money. But if 25% of that 75% stop wasting money and start proactively investing that money somewhere else, you will get back your middle class. You don't have a middle class because you have the ultra wealthy and then you have everybody else living from paycheck to paycheck. That's the two gaps. That's the gap between the two. But if you start having more people that are able to build a savings, build an investment, Create trust, will that money to a next generation. You start having the second and third generation that is taught to be financially savvy. They are taught to not waste money unnecessarily. So before they even start receiving this inheritance, they are able to understand financial responsibility, where we start having generation after generation teaching our kids 8, 10, 12, 15 years old how to make, save, and invest money so that by the time they're 20 years old, they've been investing for the last 10 years, where they can hit the ground running, being financially responsible, deciding if they're going to go to college to network or if they're going to go to college to use that piece of paper to get into a job that they actually want to do. Because when you understand that college does not give you real world application, the book smarts have shit to do with the street smarts that you need to get from the internship. But college gives you the internship. You can't get the job any other way unless you're scrubbing toilets for that company as a high school diploma, and then you just learn from the people that you walk past, and then start applying yourself and get promoted from a janitor to one of the board members. That's the way we used to do it 50 years ago. You might have started 75 years ago. You would have walked onto that job, washing the cars in the parking lot, got a job holding a door, then got promoted to cleaning the bathrooms, to getting promoted to carrying the mail, to getting promoted to doing all of the tasks, to getting promoted to working your way up. That's what it used to be 75 years ago. Now everybody's got to have a bachelor's degree to clean the toilets. Mascots at Disney World have to have a 4-year institutional degree to put on a Mickey Mouse costume. Okay. And you're not getting paid big bucks to be a mascot at Walt Disney. Okay. Technology all over the place right now is completely overrunning the manual labor workforce. High tech industries that are automating technology, they just fired 200,000 tech employees because those people created software, Anthropic, that did not need that manual labor anymore. And then they fired 200,000 people who went to college, probably got master's degrees in technology, and then got into this big business thinking that they were big shit on a plate until they got replaced by the software that they created. So at no point on this podcast do I give two shits about anybody who does not impact our ability to make, save, and invest money. I don't care. I don't care, because there's so much stuff that we could talk about. We could talk about the wars in other countries. We could talk about the terrorism in other countries. We could talk about the riots all over the world. We could talk about the people, the racism in America, where people are protesting in America for Palestinians, and Palestinians are hate speech against the protesters. We could talk about all of that stuff, but how does that impact your ability to stop working two jobs and start only working one? How does that change you from working every day to not having to work every day? How will you ever get to be sipping Mai Tais on a yacht in the middle of the Bermuda Triangle if you don't stop worrying about other people's bullshit and just focus on yourself? So yeah, when people come and ask me ridiculous questions, I'm just like, nah, fuck that shit. He said, I guess the reason that most people are poor is that they don't think like investors. They do not think like investors. Most people are consumers. They go to work to make money, to spend money. That's what they do. They live from paycheck to paycheck. They only go back to work to get enough money to spend money. Then, if they make too much money, they upgrade their standard living lifestyle creep to spend more money. They're always living from paycheck to paycheck. They're always working overtime. They're always working a second job. They're only dating people that make enough money to help them subsidize their standard of living. And if the two of them can come together and make enough money to cover us even higher standard of living, you'll go from living in a project to living in a 2-bedroom house in a gated community. And now you're still working from paycheck to paycheck. Oh, yeah, you've got a luxurious car. You went from a Honda Civic to a Mercedes Benz. You went from a Toyota Corolla from 1988 to a BMW from 2024. But if you miss 3 paychecks in a row because of that last shutdown, your car is being repossessed and your house is being foreclosed on. So at the end of the day, if we start thinking like investors, we start taking the extra money. You stay in that house that you could afford when you wasn't making big money, and you stay in that house. You find somebody that work with you. Y'all live under one income, and then take the other income and y'all invest it. And I showed y'all $245,000 a year people can become a millionaire in 10 years. $1.5 million in 20 years. Two $55,000 a year people. And I can tell you these types of incomes is two teachers, two nurses, two a night shift worker and a day shift worker at a Wendy's, a night shift worker at a Waffle House and a day shift worker at a McDonald's, two people at an Amazon. This is two people working at a gas station, two people working at a Wawa can come together, live under one income, invest the other income, and be millionaires. Where you will go from working at a gas station to owning gas stations, but it takes having the mentality of an investor. I broke it so far down to the fact that I can show you two janitors at two schools, two bus drivers at two other schools. And those four people come together and you have four millionaires. And once I put that out there, I'm like, nah, fuck that shit. You can't come to me and be like, oh man, what happened? So and so yeah, I agree with you, never abandon a Toyota. I'm not gonna lie, I do not have a Toyota in my presence right now, and that is only because I haven't picked one up. It is not because I got rid of a Toyota. Because I will never get, every time I have ever parted ways with a Toyota, the Toyota was no longer operational. It was always carried off on a flatbed truck to a tow yard. That is the only time I have ever parted ways with a Toyota. I have never sold a Toyota. It was parts. That's it. That's it. He said, so are there enough jobs at Disney for all the tech guys who lost their jobs? Actually, yes. To be honest with you, because Disney has four parks in Florida, and then they have Disney World in California, and that's like almost a whole city. So yeah, they actually do. So the 200,000 people that got fired from their tech jobs could in fact get jobs at Disney World. They could get jobs at either Disney World or Disneyland. But the irony and the irony of that is one of the reasons why Disney will always have a place for them is because about two or three hundred of them a year are being arrested for human trafficking. So I don't know how they're vetting their employees at Disney, but every year, two to three times a year, a few hundred Disney employees are being arrested for trafficking. So, or at least being involved in it. So, the irony is they're always looking for new help. They're always looking for new help. It's a revolving door. But how would you feel if you went to college, 8 years of college, 10 years of college, master's degree, go to this big name tech firm? This became your whole identity. This is all you were for the last 15, 20 years. You created this bomb ass software. You were celebrating with your friends, champagne all over the place, all of this stuff. And now you're flipping burgers at a McDonald's with a dropout that's been working for the company for 30 years, and that person's got more pull than you. Fuck that shit. How do you feel at 60 years old? Now you're working where your boss is 22 telling you what to do. Fuck that shit. At the end of the day, I will not care about anything, no matter how tragic it is, if there's not a profit behind it. Yeah, I'm either going to talk about it because there's a financial loss somewhere, or I'm talking about it because there's a financial gain somewhere. I will not cover a topic on this podcast that does not impact your ability to make, save, and invest money. Now, while this and that does talk about this, that, and everything in between, and I have no problem with segueing into some frivolous things from here and there, but the core concepts of the show are primarily all about your ability to improve yourselves. Because if not, if I don't talk about the common knowledge that is no longer common, then when are we going to learn from somebody? Because we weren't taught this from our ancestors. Our moms and dads and our grandmas and grandpas didn't know this shit. It took me 41 years to figure it out. And I'm the only person on YouTube talking about it. And I'm the only person on YouTube that's talking about it on Twitch and Twitter and TikTok at the exact same fucking time. This is the only podcast that is spread across four different social media platforms promoting your ability to do better. Every other podcast you see is like a red pill, blue pill, black pill podcast where guys are talking about how women ain't shit and women are talking about how men ain't shit, but nobody's talking about how we can do better. Everyone brings up a complaint, does a social discussion about a complaint, and then after they finish doing a social discussion about the complaint, they enjoy a million views. I'm the only podcast that's saying, hey, you can fix your own failures. You can fix your own failures. All you have to do is apply yourself. Every time I talk about a discussion, gender wise, gender debates, it's always first person accountability. It is never bashing the other person. I will not blame the government for the society that I live in. I blame the society that built the government. I will not blame the other person in a relationship because the person who is dissatisfied with the relationship had the ability to contribute to the relationship too. It is never one sided. Both sides are involved. You say, are they getting arrested while wearing a Mickey Mouse suit? Actually, no. What happens is that they clock out of the job. They go to some local hotels. Everybody meets up. One dad actually drove to Polk County, Florida, from out of state and left his daughter in the hotel and went to go perform this activity and got arrested with somebody else's child in a sting operation with a few hundred employees that were off-duty Disneyland employees, but it's a repetitive behavior that the Disney employees are getting got. FX Trader says, is the financial education knowledge the reason that kids from rich families have huge advantages? Yes. Okay, so the financial access that rich families give their kids the huge advantage financially, but the knowledge they learn from the old folks, when not to buy stuff, when not to waste their money on stuff, when not to affiliate with broke people who have broke minded spending habits, when not to use your money to impress people because that's a waste of money. Those people aren't important. They need your money. You don't need their attention. You don't get taught that in school. You don't get taught that. We don't even have home economics in high school right now that I know of. We go to college and we learn accounting, where accounting is accounting a rich man's money, not how to balance my own money. We learn business degrees, how to manage somebody else's business, not to build our own. This podcast teaches you how to build your own business. This podcast teaches you how to count your own money. This podcast teaches you how to invest your own money. And this podcast tells you don't waste your time with people that ain't shit. That's why as soon as mixed martial arts said that for the third comment, I blocked him because I'm like, no, I am not putting up with anything that is not your ability to improve yourself because otherwise I'd be wasting my time. I'm not here trying to get a million views so that I can just sit here and ride the wave. My career is not this, but my legacy is the success of the people around me. Therefore, if this podcast can touch a million people and help a million people better their lives, and those people can dedicate this podcast to their success, where they tell their kids and their kids' about how this one podcast that they watched on social media helped them get their shit together, and now their kids don't have to suffer, and their kids is watching that same podcast. If I'm here for 25 or 30 years and I got second generation families watching this podcast and they're teaching their kids the same shit, just like Kevin Samuels, man is dead, and they're still putting videos about that man all over social media. If my knowledge can go further than my lifespan, then I left an impact on this world. That's my legacy. My kids, my grandkids can come and say, well, shit, I can learn everything from great grandpa because his platform is still on YouTube. I can leave a mark in ways that it will not be touched by not even Martin Luther King. Because while there is a street in every city that separates the poor community from the non poor community by Martin Luther King Drive, and every school and library south of that street is a Martin Luther King High School or a Martin Luther King Middle School or a Martin Luther King Library, we still have racism in this country. We still have social bias in this country. We still have social classism in this country. But what we don't have is the last generation teaching the next generation how to get your shit together. And what we don't have is the current generation taking knowledge about getting their shit together. And what the next generation is doing is recklessly throwing their lives away because the last two generations have no fucking guidance. Then when we say this country is cooked, why is it cooked? Because out of 5 generations, nobody is telling nobody else how we can stop suffering. But everybody says that it's fucked up how I gotta work so hard and I don't have enough. Everybody's trying to find happiness and they can't find happiness, so they gotta buy happiness. You can't afford your standard of living, but you're buying happiness to make your life less miserable, which costs you more money, and now you're less miserable. You're treating the symptoms, but not solving the problem. If you solve the problem, you'd be happy. So when you ask me about the rent, yeah, Kevin Samuels is a genius. But why is Kevin Sam? I'm the next person up. I don't hold a candle to the man just yet, but I'm the next person up. That man was making sense, but he died before I started my podcast. I think there's one other person that's kind of giving some good relationship advice, but they're giving relationship advice. I'm not going to knock any podcast that is going to give you good relationship advice because you guys need to know how to treat each other better. But one thing I am going to tell you is what podcast is telling you how to fix your money. Not, no podcast. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Half of the people came. Thought I was going to sleep. Girl, I'm off until like 4 o'clock, 4 o'clock tomorrow. Tomorrow Tuesday, I got a 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. It's 1 o'clock. I ain't got no more clients for the rest of the night. This is one of the things that I work. I have 20 hours a week that I am dedicated to what I'm supposed to do because I get paid to not have to do that. Actually, no, I stand corrected. I got somebody at 6 o'clock in the morning, so I've got about from right now. I got about 4 hours, 4 or 5 hours before I got my next client, and then after that, I ain't got nothing else. So I've got quite a few hours. But dude had brought up a comment about me caring about some guy that got shot, some basketball player, not shot, but some basketball player that was 25 years old, lost his life for some reason. And I told him because he brought that up when we were talking about being successful in life and making changes financially. How you doing, Lewis? Um, when the guy came up and asked me about it, I'm like, bro, you're on my podcast talking about some football player that lost their life. Like I'm supposed to give remorse to that. And one, I don't know anything about the topic because the only thing that comes across my screen is how life impacts our ability to make, save, and invest money. And that's what I've been talking about for the last 30 minutes. It's like, bro, this podcast is not going to cover scandals. This podcast is not going to cover celebrities. When I talk about a celebrity, I talk about Shannon Sharp because he married this woman and then when she divorced him, regardless of whether or not she's telling the truth, she divorced him. She sued him. She took more than what she would have gotten off of just the alimony alone. And then after that, she caused him to give up on his ESPN contract. She destroyed the man's life and career instead of just leaving and walking away. And I only talk about that because that negatively impacts your ability to make and save and invest money. I don't talk about the celebrities. I don't talk about what Beyonce doing. I'm not talking about Nicki Minaj and Cardi B. I'm not talking about the next best rapper in the world or anything to that effect. I only talk about the things that directly impact your money because how are we going to get better in life if we don't start making better financial decisions? And I am the only podcast that is literally doing this for almost nothing. It costs me more to be on here than I actually get paid off of it to teach you guys how to make, save, and invest money, make you guys financially better, right? And if y'all take half the stuff I give you and put it into action, you will see yourself saving money. You will be able to work less. You won't have as many bills. You'll have less stress. You will find yourself with more peace of mind. You're not going to call that happiness, but you're not stressed out and exhausted on a regular basis. That's a fucking improvement. If I can get you there, that gives you enough motivation to pay attention to the rest of the shit that I was saying. When you start putting yourself in a position where, oh, okay, well, if I keep doing this for another 15, 20 years, I don't have to work no more. You've got an 8-year-old. If you follow my advice and you start rearranging the way you put your money, by the time your kid goes off to college, you don't got to do shit. You know what I mean? It's just taking the money that we waste on bad decisions and putting it towards improving our future. If last year sucked and the year before that sucked and the year before that sucked, What different did you do over the last handful of years that changed the way life sucked a little less? And that's one of the things that we don't discuss. We very rarely discuss these things. We rarely discuss if it wasn't working for you in 2024, stop doing it in 2025. If it wasn't working for you in 2025, you stop doing it in 2026. Instead of us having New Year's resolutions, and she said, I've taken some of your advice. I know. Instead of making New Year's resolutions in December that you're not going to carry forward until March. Why not make a New Year's resolution? This is a new you, girl. Woo! And then you're going to be the same asshole that you was last year. You need to find the way, find your 20-year goal, where the fuck you want to be at in 20 years. Figure out, well, it doesn't matter what it is. If you want a mansion, if you want 20 cars in a yard, you want a multi-billion-dollar business, whatever the fuck you want. How the hell do you get there? Because every guru, every seminar will tell you how great life is on the other side and not tell you how the fuck to get there. But every single day, I tell you how to get there. I'm the only podcast that does it. I tell you how to get there. He says your channel is useful as opposed to a lot of the other ones. I know. Look, bro, I was shocked when Wikipedia started linking to my podcast. I found three different links to my show that I didn't put there: knowledge, business, and social economics. And I was like, what the fuck? That just came out of nowhere. It just attached itself to all of the threads. Sometimes you can Google search some stuff, and one of my videos will come across YouTube that's providing you with insight on how to improve something. These shows are not about wasting our time. It's not about wasting our life away. It is about finding a way to do better. And no matter where we want to be at, we got to do better. I had a buddy of mine. He told me 2 years ago, "Oh, I want to be a millionaire." All right. Well, what are you doing to make? What are you doing right now to make yourself a millionaire? And since I asked him that question, he hasn't answered that question. And since he hasn't answered that question, he has changed jobs 4 times in the last 2 years. He's trying to start up a side job. He's still working on his primary job. He's been fired off of 3 of the jobs, and I still gotta help him out some kind of way to keep him afloat without giving him any money. I gotta show, hey, if you do this, you'll save money. If you do that, you'll spend less money, and then put that money towards building your nest egg so that you have abilities to invest in yourself because nobody else is going to invest in you. I'm a nobody. He's a nobody. Most of us are ultimately nobodies. So we find ourselves in positions where nobody's going to offer us $100,000 just because we walked up. And they're definitely not going to give it to us just because we asked for it. You have to invest in yourself first. You have to make yourself successful first. And then other people will invest in you. You have to build a successful business for investors to see the value in the business and then they come and invest in the business. You have to build an estate for other people to want something out of that estate in order for people to start investing in that estate, in order for people to start asking for that estate. One of the reasons why we even argue on this podcast or debate in this podcast about the relationship differences is because the women want the resources from the man, and the men do not get anything out of that besides the sex. But at the end of the day, I appreciate you, Lewis, for liking and subscribing. And whenever you have time, hit that notification button and we take out the membership because every day of the week we're releasing so many details into the membership in addition to the stuff that we talk about on this show every day. But the one of the reasons why we go through these debates and one of the reasons why we go through these discussions on the show about how the men and women don't mesh together is because the women benefit from the man's money and the men benefit from the woman's effort. And the man has to spend 3/4 of his life to get there. Well, how are men going to be valuable to women if they're wasting all of their fucking money? How can a man be husband material if he's broke as fuck on 45 years old? So how are the women going to find higher value men if we don't make them? We can't make higher value men if we don't stop talking about bullshit, start talking about how to fix ourselves. Steven says, this show has so much value that I became a member. This is the first time in life I typed one of my cards in for payment into the phone, and I'm in the 30s. That should say something, bro. Look, I'm telling y'all real quick. I'm telling y'all real quick. This is the kind of stuff, and he could tell you. If he goes into the membership right now, he will see since he signed up about 21 different posts that came up: the stocks, the bonds, the mutualities, the HSA fund accounts that came up, the the what are those? The Abide accounts that helps you with disabilities, the the whole core satellite portfolio that's going across the bottom of the screen right now. The whole list is in the portfolio. The ones that are having ex dividend days coming up, those are being dropped down. The ability to establish yourself, starting up an online business, different types of online businesses that you can start up, different types of side hustles that you can start up. I've got stuff coming out every day, every week. Something different is dropping out onto the membership, where you guys are like, fuck, there's so much stuff here. You can scroll through a lot of it. I got PDF files up there for the girlfriend contract, for the fiance contract, for the marriage contract. If you own your own house versus when you rent. And that contract allows when you start dating somebody and y'all start combining assets, y'all can document what assets that you keep, what's yours and what's hers. And then if y'all part ways, y'all agree to only take what you brought into the relationship. And then after y'all come together, y'all can amend that document every year and separate assets. You know what I mean? And like Claudia said, she said, I need a rich man. But in order for you to find a rich man, sweetheart, the men got to stop fucking up. Because how you going to find a rich man if all the men are putting all their money on pre-ordering GTA 6 and the next PlayStation 7? You know what I mean? Everybody buying the next iPhone 16, but ain't nobody trying to get them a goddamn job that's going to pay them $2,000 a week to pay for the damn iPhone. You know what I mean? We have to build a better future. They use a metaphor that says that the grass is always greener on the other side. So you got to always water your own crop. You got to always harvest your own crop. In order for you to have a crop to harvest, you have to plant your own seeds. You have to water your own garden. You have to pull the weeds out. In social interaction, that's exactly what we got to do. We have to tell the people who want to listen, this is what you can do to make yourself better. Then we have to tell the people who don't want to listen to get the fuck on. That's in the Bibles. Not that way. It's not worded that way, but it is in the Bible. It's instructed in there. He told his disciples who had the knowledge to go out and teach those who wanted to learn. You're not forcing on other people what they don't want to hear. You're teaching those people who want to learn what they need to know to be successful with their objectives. And that's all I'm doing. I'm teaching y'all what y'all, if y'all want to know how to do better, y'all are going to hang around for a few hours on a podcast and learn how to do better. And then y'all are going to take that I tell y'all and apply it. Some of that stuff, you're going to bypass it. Some of it might feel like too hard. Some of it, you might find a little motivation to get started on it. But when you start grabbing that stock up, that we got the Stash app is in the membership. There's a link in there. Get your promo. Dive in there. Get your few extra dollars on your first investment. Start investing out of the promo, and build your portfolio. Build your brokerage account through ETFs. Fastest way to get your money back. Way easier than stock trading with TD Ameritrade and Acorn. And you have the ability to do stuff like this on a regular basis so that you're not always broke. You know what I mean? Is that I like the way you explain things. You are just right, bro. I do the best that I can. I do the best that I can. But all of my information is highly researched and curated and fact checked. And then throughout the show, while I'm presenting it to you, Michael is on the comment section fact checking. If I tell you something is wrong, which rarely ever happens, Michael will come and correct you. He's corrected me 2 times. Once about Old Spice and once about Steven's age. That's it. Out of the last 3 years on this podcast, I have been corrected once about Old Spice, when it was created and who was it created for, and once about Steven's age, because I assumed based on where he was that he was in his 20s, but he's actually in his 30s. That was it. Everything else, which is like 2 out of 1,000, because I do a show 365 days a year, and out of 365 days out of the year, I was only wrong about 2 things that had nothing to do with money. He said, My guy is a Bible guy. Nice. Yes, ma'am. Look, Corinthians 1 through 21 tells you how to treat people. Don't nobody want to hear that, but Corinthians 1 through 21 tells you how to treat people. The Ten Commandments is what all of our laws are built on. Don't kill, don't steal, don't cheat people out of shit. That's your Ten Commandments. The stuff in the Quran is exactly like Corinthians 1 through 21. It's mutual respect between one another. But mutual respect comes from equal equity and investment in the other person, not equality, because men and women are not equal. But men and women can mutually benefit from one another. She benefits from him financially, and he benefits from her efforts. And that's why a 50-50 relationship is never going to work. A 50-50 relationship is not going to work because she's going to do more stuff and he's going to spend more money. And when she starts spending more money than him, she's going to complain. And when he starts doing more stuff than her, he's going to complain. And it's always going to be a breakdown of communication because nobody wants to listen. Everybody wants to talk. Nobody wants to negotiate. Everybody wants to demand. We even have in our relationships, and this negatively impacts your money. Women want to be in control, but they want a man to lead. You cannot be in control of your leader. Your child doesn't tell you what to do. That's equality. Equal equity is you'll ask them what their opinion is and see if you can work their opinion into your final decision. But you take care of your kid. He's your dependent. You tell your kid what to do. Likewise, in a relationship, the man takes care of the woman. She's a dependent. She follows his instructions. Women that don't want to do that don't belong in relationships. Why? Because your decision making skills is to find a guy with the mentality to build your relationship up to a retirement status where y'all don't have to work anymore and y'all can spend the rest of your lives enjoying each other. If you're not picking a guy with fucking sense, you failed yourself. You're not supposed to dominate him because you picked a guy that was wasteful because you were enjoying his entertainment. That is not how you find a successful relationship. That is not how you build financial success. Since I've already told you how two people can make themselves millionaires, you need to know that if you've got the right sense, you need to find out if the dude that you're talking to's got the right sense. If he's wasting his money on alcohol or cigarettes or gambling or casinos or clubbing or whatever the case may be, his car, video games, if he's wasting too much money on shit that's not making money for him, he's not the right fit for you. This is before he took you out on the first date. He ain't got a portfolio for shit. And we ain't even talking about like 100 grand. Like, did you even start up a brokerage account? Do you know what a brokerage account is? You know what I mean? Do you know what a health savings account is? Do you know what an able account is? Do you know these are the things that the man should know before he pays for the first date for you. If y'all know what y'all looking for in a successful partner, he don't have to already have it. He has to have the mentality to want to go get it and a plan of action to get there. That is what we call potential. Now you find somebody with potential, you reinforce his potential with your effort, and y'all work together to get to the goal. But if you want a made man, it doesn't matter if he's a self-made man or a society-made man. If you want a made man, you are going to have to submit to the authority of the made man. Plain and simple. We just seen it just now when we were talking about Anthropic and the U.S. government. The U.S. government pays 200 million or $200 billion worth of technology contracts to Anthropic. If you don't do what they tell you to do, they're going to cut your funding. You don't do what your husband tells you, you're not going to have a husband. If you don't do what your boyfriend tells you, you're not going to make it to the marriage. Fundamentally speaking, relationships are financially based. That's why we talk about it. Because it negatively impacts her ability to make, save, and invest money, and it negatively impacts his ability to make, save, and invest money. If we start spending money wisely, these dates won't cost so much money. Inflation only comes from us wasting money on bullshit. We wouldn't have inflation if we weren't willing to spend extra money on insignificant shit. You said self-made man or just a made man. There is definitely a difference. Okay, so first and foremost, a self-made man is a man that received an opportunity from another man, so he's not truly self-made, right? But a made man is a man that inherited the responsibilities from another man, which is completely different. They are still different. But a self-made man is a man who motivated himself to get to where he needed to be, but he accepted every opportunity offered to him from every other man around him. You know what I mean? So a made man could be a guy who hung around long enough and got promoted versus a guy who did what needed to be done and struck it rich. But it took that first handout. Like, let's go back to that Bible. God gave three coins. One got buried, one got invested in loss, one got invested in turn a profit. The two that tried did something. The one who did nothing ain't got shit. Thought, oh, I'm gonna bring back the coin and he'll be proud of me. No, fuck that. I would have been proud of you if you'd have did something. That's the opportunity cost. And that's why I talk about that on the show a lot of the times when I talk about the decision making of American people, that we don't do the right things in the right places. And that's one of the reasons why some people will think, well, you won't talk about that football player, but you'll talk about ISIS. Yeah, because look at the opportunity cost there. Look at the billions of dollars that we're spending on these people to come out and murder us in the street. But then look at the decision making of the people who are going to jail. They can't go home to their kids. They got to pay for bond. They got to pay for a lawyer. They've got to pay for probation. They can't get a good job because now they've got felonies on their record. They can't get good housing because they got felonies on it. That negatively impacts your money. Now you're living in a trailer park with a bunch of drug addicts next to a biker gang because you didn't make the right financial decisions. So when I talked about ICE, I wasn't talking about ICE because, ooh, that's the thing to talk about. No, I was talking about ICE because that impacts your money. It impacts your money because that's what $40 billion that they're giving to these people. How the fuck is this guy riding in the back of an SUV with an AR-15, making 48,000 a year with a $40,000 a year bonus? The fucker's getting paid $88,000 a year to point a pistol at you. We should be talking about that. I'm not getting $45,000 a year to ask you if you want a refill on your fucking soda. Why the fuck is this guy getting $88,000 a year to ride the back of an SUV pointing pistols at people? We got to talk about that shit because our tax dollars goes towards that opportunity cost. So yeah, when I talk about stuff on this show, underliningly, whether I declare it overall or not, money's involved. Money's involved. So whether it's a natural disaster and we can profit off of investing in FEMA, or you know they release more military troops in America and we can profit off of investing in oil, because the more deployments they have, the more fuel they burn, and the more fuel they burn, the more money we make. Wherever there's a need, there's a profit opportunity there. Wherever there's a demand, there's a profit opportunity there. Wherever there's suffering, there is a profit opportunity there. Now, in a country of capitalism being run by a capitalist political party, it is our responsibility. Oh, yes, ma'am, I'm on my way to bed too. Well, not really. I'm going to drink me some coffee and wait for this client to come through. But I appreciate you. I'm going to see you tomorrow night. Because tomorrow we're going to be talking about how to increase our credit limits and other stuff to that effect. It's a dangerous job. Most of the time, nothing happens. It is a dangerous job, but they're not talking about hazard pay. When they said $40,000 job with a $40,000 bonus, that wasn't a $40,000. That wasn't $40,000 worth of hazard pay in case they were in danger. That was a bonus for showing up every day. That's not the same. But when you think about ICE agents, the hazard pay isn't 7 days a week. They only have conflict when they get out of their SUV and start threatening the lives of unarmed citizens. You know what I mean? So ain't nobody, who the hell is getting 40,000 extra dollars of hazard pay to be in Memphis, Tennessee? What's so dangerous in Memphis, Tennessee that requires $40,000 a person of hazard pay? And it was for every ICE agent, not just the ones on the street. Even the ones in the fucking office pushing the paperwork after the guy murdered the other guy and processed the paperwork, that person was getting a $40,000 a year bonus. I was like, whoa. Even the people not in danger are getting paid extra money. So your $40,000 a year job is actually an $88,000 a year job. That's crazy. TSA don't make that kind of money. The person that checks your passport in to allow you to run your stuff through the X-ray machine don't get that kind of money. I was like, no, that ain't fair. That's not equal equity, right? That's why we talk about these things. So, on my way out the door, I want to start off by saying, ladies, as long as the situation doesn't make sense, I'm going to keep asking you guys to make it make sense. So, ladies, please make it make sense. And fellas, I give y'all this information to help y'all become higher value men because that's the only way that we're going to make it here, guys. The only way we're going to make it here. You have to find the things in your life that you can control that you don't like and proactively change these things so that you can have a better life. And then you have the capabilities to navigate around the things that you can't control. Ladies, while this is a male driven podcast from the male's perspective, you too can improve yourself to become a higher value woman. Prioritizing your 20-year plan. Where do you want to be at in 20 years? Proactively reverse engineer that plan. Put those first steps in today. Start taking action towards your 20-year plan and keep your eyes and ears open to find out if this dude either just wants to get into your plan or if he has a plan of his own that you can mesh with where y'all can accomplish y'all's goals together. If y'all can find the right mentality in the people that y'all communicate with, the people that y'all hang out with, your social network should be goal driven. If 5 of your friends ain't shit, you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you spend the most time with people that ain't trying to do nothing with their life, you are not going to amount to anything in your life. You spend more time with people that want to get better with their life, you will find yourself getting better with your life. But it requires you to step up and do something. So, with that being said, I want to thank y'all for coming to this and that. I appreciate y'all hanging out for the 3 hours and 35 minutes that we've been on the show. I'm your host, Xander, where we talk about this, that, and everything in between. And I will see you guys tomorrow night.
Chase validation, now I validate myself. Building inner strength, putting doubt upon the shelf. No more unnecessary drama, no more wasted time. Climbing higher, constantly making my own climb. My network is my net worth. Choose your company wise. Surround yourself with eagles, not with sheep in disguise. Every interaction is a reflection of my brand. Quality over quantity, that's my personal command.